The Dalton Highway doesn't forgive mistakes. 414 miles of gravel, ice, and isolation, stretching from Livingood to Deadhorse, cutting through the Brooks Range like a scar across the tundra. No cell service for most of it. No gas stations for stretches longer than some entire states. Just you, your rig, and the kind of emptiness that makes you understand why the old-timers called this place the loneliest road in America. I've been running freight up here for 17 years, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that the road itself isn't what kills you. It's the things you don't see coming, the blind corners and whiteout conditions, the black ice that appears out of nowhere when the temperature drops 10 degrees in as many minutes, the equipment failures that happen at exactly the wrong moment, in exactly the wrong place. But sometimes it's something else entirely, something you can't prepare for no matter how many years you've been behind the wheel. My name is Magnus Kepler, and I haul supplies to the North Slope oil fields. Drilling equipment, replacement parts, food shipments, whatever needs to get from Fairbanks to Prudhoe Bay. It's honest work, pays better than most trucking jobs in the lower 48, and I've gotten used to the solitude. The constant daylight in summer, the endless darkness in winter, the way the landscape looks like another planet when the northern lights start dancing across the sky. I've seen things up here that would make most drivers quit after their first run. Trucks buried in snowdrifts 20 feet deep, rigs that slid off the road and weren't found until spring thaw. I once passed a semi that had jackknifed across both lanes, the driver frozen solid in his cab because his heater failed and he couldn't get help in time. That's the reality of this road. You respect it, or it kills you. It was late January 2024 when everything went wrong. I'd just loaded up in Fairbanks with a shipment of drilling components headed north on what was supposed to be a routine 3-day haul. The weather forecast was calling for heavy snow, but that's normal for this time of year. You learn to drive through it. What they didn't tell us, what nobody saw coming, was the Arctic front that slammed down from the north with wind speeds hitting 60 miles per hour and temperatures dropping to 40 below before you even factored in the wind chill. The kind of storm that turns the Dalton into a death trap. By the time I reached Coldfoot, about halfway up, the visibility was down to maybe 20 feet. Snow coming down so thick it looked like static on an old television. The wind was hitting the trailer hard enough that I could feel the whole rig shuddering with each gust. I pulled into the truck stop there, thinking I'd wait it out for a few hours, maybe overnight if it got worse. That's a standard procedure. You don't push your luck in conditions like this. But then I got the call from my dispatcher, Etta Rourke. She's been routing drivers on the Dalton for almost as long as I've been driving it, and she doesn't panic easily. But I could hear the tension in her voice when she came through on the CB radio, crackling with static. Magnus, we've got a problem. One of our drivers broke down about 40 miles north of your position. Engine seized up, he's stuck in the middle of the storm with no heat. I felt my stomach drop. 40 miles in these conditions might as well be 400. But I also knew what it meant if somebody was stranded out there. Without heat, without shelter, you've got maybe a few hours before hypothermia sets in. Maybe less if the wind is bad enough. Who is it? I asked. She hesitated for just a second. Torrin Blythe. You know him? I did know him. Not well, but we'd crossed paths at truck stops. Exchanged stories over coffee, the way drivers do when they recognize each other on the road. Torrin was in his early 50s, a good mechanic, the kind of guy who could nurse a dying engine through an entire haul and still make his delivery on time. If his rig had seized up completely, it wasn't because he'd neglected maintenance. It was just bad luck, the kind that happens when you're pushing equipment through temperatures it was never designed to handle. "What do you need me to do?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She sighed. "I need you to go get him. State troopers are snowed in. Closest tow service is 6 hours out, And that's assuming they can even get a truck up there in this weather. You're the only one close enough to reach him before this gets worse. I looked out through my windshield at the wall of white that had swallowed the world outside. 40 miles in a blizzard like this would take me at least 2 hours, maybe more. And that was just to reach him. Getting back would be even slower, assuming we made it back at all. But you don't leave a driver out there. You just don't. It's an unspoken rule on roads like this. Doesn't matter if you're tired, doesn't matter if it's dangerous. When someone calls for help, you answer. Because next time it might be you stranded out there in the dark, watching your fuel gauge drop while the cold creeps in through every crack in the cab. "All right," I said. "Send me his coordinates. I'll head out now." "Be careful, Magnus. This storm is only getting worse." I grabbed my emergency kit from behind the seat. Extra blankets, hand warmers, a thermos of coffee, flares, a satellite phone for when the CB inevitably stopped working. I checked my fuel tanks. 3/4 full, plenty to get there and back, assuming nothing else went wrong. I fired up the engine, gave it a minute to stabilize, and then pulled back out onto the highway heading north into the storm. The first 20 miles weren't too bad. Slow, tense, every muscle in my body locked up from the concentration it took to keep the rig centered on the road. The snow was coming down in sheets, and the wind kept trying to shove the trailer sideways. But I'd driven in worse. You learn to feel the road beneath you, even when you can't see it. You learn to trust your instincts to sense when the tires are losing grip before it becomes a full skid. It's not skill, exactly. It's closer to survival instinct, something you develop after enough close calls. But around mile marker 30, everything changed. The wind picked up even harder, slamming into the side of my rig with enough force that I had to fight the wheel just to stay on the road. The temperature gauge on my dashboard dropped another 5 degrees. The snow turned into a full whiteout, the kind where you can't tell where the road ends and the ditch begins. I slowed down to a crawl, maybe 15 miles per hour, both hands locked on the wheel. My headlights barely cut through the storm. Everything outside was just white noise, a swirling chaos of wind and ice and darkness. And then I saw it. At first, I thought it was just a shadow in the storm, a trick of the light. But as I got closer, the shape became clearer. A tanker truck sitting sideways across both lanes, completely blocking the road. I hit the brakes, felt the rig start to slide, and eased off just enough to regain control. My heart was hammering in my chest. I came to a stop about 50 feet away from the tanker, hazard lights flashing, engine idling. I sat there for a moment, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The tanker wasn't Torrin's rig. I knew his truck, and this wasn't it. This was something else. An old Peterbilt, rusted and battered, the kind of truck that should have been decommissioned years ago. The trailer was a cylindrical tank, the kind used for hauling fuel or chemicals. No company markings, no registration numbers visible through the snow, just bare metal, streaked with ice and corrosion, and it was sitting dead center in the road, angled like it had jackknifed and then just been abandoned there. I grabbed my flashlight and my CB radio, tried calling Etta, but all I got was static. The storm was too thick, the signal too weak. I was on my own. I climbed down from the cab and the wind hit me like a physical force. The cold was immediate and brutal, cutting through my layers like they weren't even there. I pulled my hood up, cinched it tight, and started walking toward the tanker. Every step was a fight. The snow was already knee-deep in places, and the wind kept trying to knock me off balance. I reached the tanker and shone my flashlight along the side of it. The metal was covered in a thick layer of ice, and there were patches where the paint had completely worn away, exposing bare steel underneath. The tires were flat, or close to it. The whole thing looked like it had been sitting there for hours, maybe longer. I walked around to the cab, expecting to find it empty. But what I saw stopped me cold. The driver's side door was hanging open, swinging slightly in the wind. Inside, the cab was dark. I could see the outline of the seat, the steering wheel, but no driver, no signs of life. Just an empty cab, door open, in the middle of a blizzard. I climbed up onto the step and leaned inside, shining my flashlight around. The interior was trashed. Papers scattered everywhere, coffee cups knocked over, frost covering the dashboard. The keys were still in the ignition. The engine was cold, dead. Whoever had been driving this thing they'd left in a hurry, or something had forced them out. I backed down from the cab and walked toward the rear of the tanker. The trailer was locked, a heavy padlock securing the rear hatch. But something about it felt wrong. The metal around the lock was scratched, like someone had been trying to pry it open, and there were dark stains on the snow beneath the trailer, streaks of something that wasn't snow or ice. I crouched down, touched one of the stains with my gloved hand. Even through the cold, I could feel the texture. Thick, viscous, not oil, not fuel, something else. That's when I heard it. A sound coming from inside the tanker. A low, rhythmic thumping, like something hitting the inside of the metal walls. Slow at first, then faster, louder. I stood up, took a step back. The thumping continued 3 times, then silence, then 3 times again. I tried the CB radio one more time. Nothing but static. I was 40 miles from Coldfoot, 10 miles from Torrin's last known position, standing in front of a derelict tanker truck in the middle of a blizzard, listening to something inside the trailer that shouldn't be there. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to get back in my rig and find another way around. But there was no other way around. The road was narrow here, bordered on both sides by steep embankments. I couldn't turn around, couldn't back up for miles. The only way forward was past this tanker, and the only way to move it was to figure out what the hell was going on. I walked back to my rig, grabbed a crowbar from my toolbox, and returned to the tanker. The thumping had stopped. Everything was quiet now, except for the wind. I positioned myself in front of the rear hatch, crowbar in hand, and stared at the lock. This was a mistake. I knew it was a mistake. But I also knew I couldn't just leave it there. If Torrin was stranded another 10 miles up the road, I needed to get past this thing. And if there was someone inside that trailer, someone who needed help, I couldn't just walk away. I wedged the crowbar under the lock and pulled. The metal groaned, resisted, then gave way with a sharp crack. The lock fell into the snow, and the hatch swung open slowly, hinges creaking. I stepped back, flashlight raised, ready for anything. The inside of the trailer was pitch black. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the interior. And what I saw made my blood run cold. The tanker wasn't empty. It wasn't carrying fuel or chemicals or anything it was supposed to be carrying. It was full of supplies, cases of food, water, medical equipment, blankets, clothing, tools, all of it piled haphazardly inside, like someone had been stockpiling it. And in the very back, barely visible in the shadows, was something else, a shape, human-sized, wrapped in plastic sheeting. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. This wasn't a breakdown. This wasn't an accident. This was something deliberate. Someone had been using this tanker to haul something, and whatever it was, they didn't want anyone to find it. The thumping started again, louder this time, coming from the shape in the back. Not random, not rhythmic, deliberate. 3 thumps, pause, 3 thumps. Someone was alive in there. I should have run. I should have gotten back in my rig, called for help on the satellite phone, let someone else deal with this. But I didn't. I climbed into the trailer, crowbar still in hand, and started toward the back. The cold inside was even worse than outside. My breath came out in clouds, and the metal walls seemed to close in around me. I reached the shape in the back, knelt down, and pulled back the plastic sheeting. And that's when I saw his face. Torrin Blythe. Unconscious. Hypothermic, but alive. His lips were blue, his skin pale and cold to the touch. But he was breathing. Shallow, ragged breaths, but breathing. I grabbed his shoulders, shook him gently. Torrin, wake up. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused. He tried to speak, but all that came out was a hoarse whisper. Magnus, get up. We need to get out of here. He shook his head weakly. Can't, too cold. I pulled him into a sitting position, wrapped one of the blankets around his shoulders. I don't care. We're leaving. Now. That's when I heard the second sound. Footsteps. Crunching through the snow outside the trailer. Slow. Deliberate. Coming closer. I froze. Whoever had left this tanker here, whoever had locked Torrin inside, they were back. And they knew I was here. I killed my flashlight and pulled Torrin deeper into the shadows at the back of the trailer. My hand was still on his shoulder, keeping him steady, keeping him quiet. He was shivering violently now, barely conscious, but aware enough to know something was wrong. The footsteps outside grew louder, closer, crunching through the snow with deliberate slowness. Whoever it was, they weren't in a hurry. They were checking the perimeter, looking for signs of disturbance. I could hear them moving along the side of the tanker, boots scraping against metal, pausing every few steps. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might give us away. I tightened my grip on the crowbar, positioned myself between Torrin and the open hatch. If someone came through that door, I'd have maybe 1 second to react. One chance to swing hard enough to buy us time to run. But run where? My rig was 50 feet away. Torrin could barely stand. The storm was still raging outside. We were trapped. The footsteps stopped directly outside the rear hatch. I could see a shadow moving across the beam of light coming in from outside, could hear breathing now, heavy and labored. Whoever it was stood there for what felt like an eternity, just listening. I pressed myself against the cold metal wall, crowbar raised, barely daring to breathe. Then, without warning, the hatch slammed shut. The sound echoed through the trailer like a gunshot, plunging us into complete darkness. I heard the lock click back into place. We were sealed inside. I fumbled for my flashlight, hands shaking, and clicked it back on. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating Torrin's pale face. He was staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. Magnus, he whispered, his voice barely audible. What's happening? I don't know, I said, but we're getting out of here. I moved back to the hatch and examined it. The lock was back in place, but it had been damaged when I pried it open the first time. The metal was bent, the mechanism loose. I wedged the crowbar into the gap and started working it back and forth, trying to force it open again. The metal groaned and creaked, but it held. Outside, I could hear the footsteps moving away from the tanker, heading toward the front. Toward my rig. That realization hit me like a punch to the gut. My truck. All my supplies, my communication equipment, my only way out of here. If they got into my cab, if they disabled my rig, we were as good as dead. I redoubled my efforts on the lock, throwing all my weight against the crowbar. Come on, come on! The metal shrieked in protest, and suddenly the lock gave way. The hatch swung open and cold air rushed in. I didn't wait. I grabbed Torrin under the arms and half-carried, half-dragged him toward the opening. He was dead weight, his legs barely working, but adrenaline gave me strength I didn't know I had. We tumbled out of the trailer and into the snow. The cold hit me like a wall, stealing my breath. I could see my rig in the distance, hazard lights still flashing through the storm, and next to it, barely visible through the blowing snow, was another vehicle. A pickup truck, dark-colored, no headlights. Someone was standing next to my driver's side door, trying the handle, testing it. My rig was locked, thank God, but that wouldn't stop them for long if they really wanted in. I pulled Torin to his feet, got his arm around my shoulders. "We need to move, now." He tried to protest, but I didn't give him a choice. We started moving through the snow, staying low, using the tanker as cover. Every step was agony. The wind was vicious, the cold searing. Torin's weight was almost more than I could manage, but I kept going. We reached the front of the tanker and I paused, peering around the edge. The figure was still at my truck, but now they were moving toward the trailer, checking the connections, looking for cargo, looking for something valuable. That's when I realized what this was, a hijacking. They'd blocked the road with the tanker, waited for someone to stop and investigate. When I'd opened the trailer and found Torin, I'd walked right into their trap. The only question was why they'd put Torin in there in the first place. Had they found him stranded and decided to use him as bait? Or was there something else going on? I didn't have time to figure it out. The person at my truck was wearing heavy winter gear, face covered by a balaclava and goggles. I couldn't tell if it was a man or woman, couldn't see any identifying features, but I could see the rifle slung across their back. That changed everything. This wasn't just theft, this was armed robbery, maybe worse. I looked back at Torin. "Can you run?" He shook his head. "Too weak. Then I'm going to need you to hide, right here. Don't move, don't make a sound. I'm going to get my truck." His hand grabbed my arm, surprisingly strong for someone on the edge of hypothermia. "Don't, they'll kill you." "Maybe. But if we stay here, we're dead anyway." I pulled free from his grip and lowered him into a snowdrift beside the tanker, packing snow around him for insulation. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Then I started moving, keeping low, circling wide around the tanker to approach my rig from the passenger side. The storm was my ally now. The wind and snow made me almost invisible, just another shadow in the chaos. I reached my truck and crouched beside the passenger door, fumbling for my keys. My hands were numb, clumsy. I dropped the keys once, had to scramble in the snow to find them. Finally, I got the door unlocked and pulled it open as quietly as I could. The interior of the cab was warm, almost shockingly so after being outside. I climbed in, keeping my head down, and crawled across to the driver's seat. Through the driver's side window, I could see the figure moving back toward the front of my trailer. They were checking the load, looking for a way to access it. I reached for the ignition, hand shaking. If I started the engine now, they'd hear it immediately. I'd have maybe 5 seconds before they came back around, rifle in hand. But if I didn't start it, if I waited too long, they'd spot me in the cab and I'd lose any advantage I had. I made the decision in a split second. I turned the key. The engine roared to life, and I slammed my foot down on the accelerator. The rig lurched forward, tires spinning in the snow before finding purchase. I cranked the wheel hard to the left, swinging the trailer around in a wide arc. I couldn't see the figure anymore, couldn't tell if they were in front of me or behind me. I just kept going, building speed, fighting to keep the rig under control. Something hit the side of the trailer with a metallic clang. Then another impact, this one closer to the cab. They were shooting at me. The realization sent ice through my veins. I hunched lower in the seat, one hand on the wheel, the other reaching for the CB radio. Still nothing but static. I grabbed the satellite phone instead, punched in Edda's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Come on, pick up." The 4th ring cut off mid-tone, and I heard her voice crackling with interference. "Magnus? Edda, I'm in trouble. I need state troopers now. I'm about 40 miles north of Coldfoot. Someone tried to hijack my rig. They've got guns. What? Magnus, slow down? What's happening? I gave her the shortest version I could manage while keeping the truck moving. The tanker blocking the road, finding Torin, the person with the rifle. She was silent for a moment, processing. Then her voice came back, all business. The storm has the highway shut down. No one can get to you right now. You need to keep moving north. Get to the Sukakpak Mountain pull-off. There's a maintenance station there. It should be manned. How far? About 15 miles. Can you make it? I looked in my side mirror. Through the snow, I could just barely make out headlights behind me. The pickup truck was following. They weren't giving up. I don't have a choice, I said. I'm being followed. I've got Torin with me. He needs medical attention. Keep this line open, Etta said. I'm contacting emergency services now. Keep moving. Don't stop for anything. I dropped the phone onto the passenger seat and focused on the road. The visibility was still terrible, maybe 30 feet at best. I was driving blind, trusting memory and instinct to keep me on the pavement. The headlights behind me were getting closer. Whoever was driving that pickup knew these roads better than I did, or they were crazy enough not to care about the conditions. Either way, they were gaining on me. I pushed the accelerator harder, felt the trailer start to sway. Too fast. I was going too fast for conditions like this, but slowing down meant letting them catch up, and I had a feeling that would be worse. The road curved ahead, a gentle bend to the right that I knew from memory. I eased off the gas slightly, let the momentum carry me through. The trailer drifted wide, tires hunting for grip on the ice beneath the snow. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought I'd lost it. Thought the whole rig was going to jackknife and send me spinning into the ditch. But the tires caught. The trailer straightened out, and I was through the curve. Behind me, the pickup's headlights swerved wildly. They'd taken the curve too fast, overcorrected. I watched in my mirror as they fishtailed, recovered, kept coming. They were relentless. I realized with growing dread that they weren't going to give up. They'd follow me all the way to that maintenance station if they had to, and when I stopped, when I had to stop, they'd be right there. I needed a plan. I couldn't outrun them, not in these conditions. I couldn't fight them, not against a rifle. My only option was to survive long enough to reach help. 15 miles might as well have been 1,500. Then I remembered Torin. I'd left him in the snowdrift beside the tanker. He was still back there, alone, exposed. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. I'd made a choice in that moment, decided that saving myself meant sacrificing him, but I couldn't live with that. I couldn't leave him out there. I grabbed the satellite phone. "Etta," I said. "Torin's still back at the tanker." I had to leave him, silence on the other end. Then, quietly, Magnus, "You can't go back. If you go back, they'll kill you both. I know, but I can't just leave him, Magnus." Her voice was firm now, the voice she used when she was pulling a driver off the road for their own safety. "Listen to me. The best thing you can do for Torin right now is get to that maintenance station. Get help. We'll send someone back for him as soon as the storm clears. If you go back now, you'll die." She was right. I knew she was right, but knowing it and accepting it were two different things. I tightened my grip on the wheel and kept driving. The headlights behind me were still there, maybe 100 yards back. Persistent, patient, waiting for me to make a mistake. The miles crawled by. Each one felt like an eternity. The storm showed no signs of letting up. If anything, it was getting worse. The wind was strong enough now that I could feel it shoving the entire rig sideways every time I hit an exposed stretch of road. The temperature gauge on my dashboard read -42, without the wind chill, I couldn't imagine what it felt like outside. Couldn't imagine what Torin was going through right now, assuming he was still alive. I tried not to think about it. Tried to focus on the road, on survival, on getting through the next mile and then the next. But the guilt was there, gnawing at me, making it hard to breathe. I'd left him, I'd made the choice, and no matter how many times I told myself it was the right choice, it still felt like a betrayal. The satellite phone crackled. Magnus. Edda's voice cut through my thoughts. I've got state troopers responding. They're mobilizing a winter rescue team, but it's going to take time. How are you holding up? I'm about 10 miles out from the maintenance station, I said. Still being followed, still alive. That's good. That's real good. Just keep moving. Don't engage them. Don't give them any reason to escalate. Too late for that, I thought. They'd already shot at me. But I didn't say that to Edda. She had enough to worry about. The road ahead opened up slightly, the trees pulling back on either side. I recognized this stretch. Another 5 miles and I'd see the pull-off for the maintenance station. 5 miles. I could do 5 miles. The pickup behind me suddenly accelerated, headlights growing brighter in my mirror. They were making a move. I braced myself, expecting another shot, another impact. Instead, they pulled up alongside me, matching my speed. We were side by side now, my rig and their pickup, both of us hurtling through a blizzard at speeds that would get us both killed if either one of us lost control. I couldn't see through their windows. The snow and darkness made it impossible, but I could feel them there, could sense the threat radiating from that vehicle like heat. They stayed alongside me for maybe 30 seconds, close enough that I could have reached out and touched their door if the window had been open. Then they accelerated again, pulling ahead. For a moment I thought they were giving up, thought they'd decided I wasn't worth the trouble. Then I saw what they were doing. They were cutting me off. The pickup swerved directly in front of my rig, brake lights flaring red through the snow. I had maybe 2 seconds to react. I slammed on my brakes, felt the tires lock up. The rig started to slide, the trailer swinging wide to the left. I released the brakes, pumped them again, trying to regain control. The pickup was slowing down in front of me, forcing me to slow down, trying to bring me to a complete stop. If I stopped, I was dead. I knew that with absolute certainty. So I didn't stop. I cranked the wheel to the right, aiming for the narrow space between the pickup and the edge of the road. It was a gap barely wide enough for my rig, and I was taking it at 40 miles per hour in zero visibility. The passenger side of my trailer clipped the back end of the pickup with a grinding crunch of metal on metal. The impact jolted through the entire rig, nearly throwing me out of my seat. But I was through. I was past them. I accelerated again, pushing the engine as hard as I dared. Behind me, the pickup had spun out. I watched in my mirror as they fought to regain control, tires spinning uselessly on the ice. Then they were moving again, coming after me, but I'd bought myself some distance, maybe a quarter mile, maybe enough. The maintenance station appeared out of the storm like a mirage. A small building with a generator out front, lights blazing in the windows, 2 vehicles parked outside. I'd never been so glad to see electric lights in my life. I pulled into the lot, hit the brakes, and brought the rig to a sliding stop maybe 10 feet from the building's entrance. I grabbed the satellite phone and practically fell out of the cab, legs shaking so badly I could barely stand. The cold hit me again, but I didn't care. I ran for the door, pounded on it with my fist. The door opened immediately, and a man in a maintenance uniform stood there, eyes wide with surprise. "Help!" I gasped. "Someone's following me. They've got guns." He didn't hesitate. He pulled me inside and slammed the door behind us, throwing the deadbolt. Then he grabbed a radio off his belt and started calling for help. I collapsed onto a bench near the door, chest heaving, hands still shaking. Through the window, I could see the pickup pulling into the lot. It stopped maybe 50 yards away, headlights pointed directly at the building. Just sitting there, watching. The maintenance worker came back over, handed me a cup of coffee. "Already called it in," he said. "Troopers are on their way. Storm's starting to break up north of here. They should be able to get through." I wrapped my hands around the cup, feeling the warmth seep into my frozen fingers. "There's another driver," I said, "back at mile marker 30. His name is Torrin Blythe. He's hypothermic. He needs help." The worker nodded, made another call on his radio. Then we waited. The pickup stayed in the lot for another 10 minutes. Just sitting there, engine running, headlights burning through the storm. Then, without warning, it reversed, turned around, and disappeared back into the darkness. They were gone, but I knew they'd taken Torrin with them. The state troopers arrived 40 minutes later, 2 vehicles pushing through what was left of the storm. By then, the wind had died down to occasional gusts, and the snow had thinned enough that you could see maybe 100 yards in any direction. The maintenance worker had kept me supplied with coffee and let me use his bathroom to warm up. My hands had finally stopped shaking, but the cold had settled into my bones in a way that no amount of heat seemed to fix. I gave my statement to the lead trooper, a woman in her 40s with steel-gray eyes and the kind of weathered face that told you she'd seen worse than what I was describing. She listened without interrupting, took notes, asked clarifying questions about the tanker, the pickup truck, the person with the rifle. When I got to the part about leaving Torrin behind, my voice cracked. She didn't judge, didn't offer empty reassurances. She just nodded and wrote it down. "They're organizing a search team," she said when I finished. "As soon as we can get equipment up there safely, we'll go back for your friend. But I need you to understand something. This isn't the first time we've dealt with this kind of operation." "What kind of operation?" I asked. "Highway robbery, hijacking. These crews set up roadblocks, use disabled vehicles or staged accidents to stop trucks, then take whatever cargo they can move quickly. Usually they're after high-value goods, electronics, pharmaceuticals, anything they can sell fast. But sometimes," she paused, looking at me carefully, "sometimes they take the drivers too." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, take the drivers?" She glanced at her partner, a younger trooper standing by the door, then back at me. "We've had 3 drivers go missing on the Dalton in the past 18 months. All of them were running solo. All of them disappeared during bad weather. We found their rigs, but never the drivers. Until now, we thought they'd just gotten lost in the storms, wandered off, and died from exposure. But if what you're telling me is accurate, if someone's deliberately targeting drivers, then we're dealing with something much worse." I felt sick. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. Torrin wasn't just missing. He'd been taken. And whoever had him, they'd done this before. "Do you think he's still alive?" I asked. The trooper's expression didn't change. "I don't know. But if he is, we need to find him fast." She radioed for additional units, coordinated with search and rescue. I sat there feeling useless, helpless while they worked. The maintenance worker brought me a blanket and suggested I try to rest, but rest was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Torrin's face in the back of that tanker, pale and terrified. Heard his voice telling me not to go back for my truck. I should have listened. I should have found another way. An hour passed, then another. The storm had broken completely now, leaving behind a landscape of white silence. The sun was starting to rise, casting everything in shades of gray and blue. The troopers had set up a mobile command post in the maintenance station, radios crackling with chatter, computers displaying maps and coordinates. I watched them work, feeling like I was in some kind of surreal nightmare. Then one of the radios squawked. We've got visual on the tanker." The lead trooper grabbed the handset. "What's the situation?" The voice on the other end was clipped, professional. "Vehicle is empty. No sign of anyone inside or around it. We're checking for forensics now. What about tracks?" "Plenty of them. Looks like multiple vehicles, hard to say how many. Snow's already covering most of it." "Any sign of the victim?" "Negative. But we found something else. You need to see this." The trooper looked at me. "Can you drive?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure if that was true. My body felt like it belonged to someone else, operating on autopilot. "You're coming with us," she said. "I need you to identify anything that might help us figure out where they took him." We rode in the trooper's vehicle, a heavy-duty SUV equipped with chains and emergency gear. The drive back to the tanker took 20 minutes, navigating roads that were still treacherous despite the clearing weather. When we arrived, there were already 3 other vehicles on scene. Crime scene tape had been strung up around the tanker, and technicians in heavy coats were photographing everything, collecting samples, marking evidence flags in the snow. The tanker looked different in daylight. Less ominous, more pathetic. Just an old, rusted piece of equipment that should have been scrapped years ago. The rear hatch was still hanging open, the padlock I'd broken lying in the snow. I followed the trooper around to the side of the trailer where another technician was crouched, examining something in the snow. The trooper gestured for me to stay back, then walked over to confer with the tech. They spoke in low voices too quiet for me to hear. Then the trooper turned and waved me over. I approached carefully, picking my way through the marked evidence flags. When I got close enough to see what they were looking at, I stopped cold. There were dark stains in the snow, a lot of them, leading from the tanker to where a vehicle had been parked, then disappearing down the road. Not oil, not fuel, blood. "How much blood does a person have to lose before they die?" I asked, my voice hollow. The technician glanced up at me, then back at the stains. "Depends on a lot of factors. But this much," he gestured at the trail. "This is serious. This is life-threatening." I turned away, fighting the urge to be sick. The trooper put a hand on my shoulder. "We don't know that it's his blood. Could be from an animal. Could be from someone else. But we need to prepare for the possibility that your friend is seriously injured." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. They continued processing the scene while I stood there, useless and numb. After a while, I walked back to my rig, still parked 50 yards up the road where I'd left it during the chase. The driver's side mirror was cracked, and there were bullet holes in the trailer. 3 of them clustered near the front. If any of those shots had been a few feet to the left, they would have gone through the cab, would have gone through me. I climbed into the cab and sat in the driver's seat, staring out at the scene through the windshield. This was supposed to be a simple rescue. Go north, pick up a stranded driver, bring him back to safety. Instead, I'd walked into something that looked more like an organized crime operation, and Torin was paying the price for my decisions. My satellite phone buzzed. I picked it up, saw Edda's name on the screen. Magnus, her voice was tight with worry. "I just heard from the troopers. Are you okay?" "Physically, yeah. Everything else, not so much." "I heard about the blood." She was silent for a moment. "Listen to me. This isn't your fault. You did everything you could." "Did I?" I asked, "because it doesn't feel that way." "Yes," she said firmly. "You tried to save him. You risked your life. No one can ask for more than that." I wanted to believe her, but the guilt was a physical weight in my chest, making it hard to breathe. "The troopers are going to want you to stay in the area," she continued. "Help with the investigation. I've already cleared your schedule. The company will cover your expenses." "I appreciate that." "Magnus," she said, her voice softer now. "Come back in one piece, okay? I'm not losing 2 drivers on this run. I'll do my best." I ended the call and sat there in the silence. Outside, the crime scene techs were still working, methodically documenting everything. The sun was higher now, turning the snow into a blinding white field that hurt to look at. One of the techs approached my truck and tapped on the window. I rolled it down. "We need to process your vehicle," he said. "It's part of the crime scene, evidence collection. Shouldn't take more than a couple hours." I climbed down and let them work. Watched as they photographed the bullet holes, collected samples from the trailer, dusted for fingerprints on the exterior. The lead trooper came over holding a tablet computer. "We've been going through the registration records," she said. "This tanker was reported stolen 8 months ago from a depot outside Fairbanks. Owner thought it had been scrapped. Someone's been using it as mobile storage for a while now." "What was in it?" I asked. "Besides Torin." She showed me photos on the tablet. The supplies I'd seen, cases of food and water, had been inventoried. But there was more. Camping equipment, generators, fuel cans, medical supplies. Enough stuff to support a small camp for weeks. "You think they're living out here?" I asked. "Somewhere," she said. "There's no way they're hauling all this gear back and forth every time they pull a job. They've got a base somewhere within range of this highway. We're working on narrowing down the location. How do you narrow down a location in thousands of square miles of wilderness?" She smiled grimly. "Cell tower data. Even out here, there are a few towers servicing the oil fields. We can track any phone activity in the area, see if there are patterns. It's not perfect, but it's a start." "What about the blood?" I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Still waiting on the analysis. "We've sent samples to the lab in Fairbanks. Should have preliminary results by tonight." I nodded, feeling helpless again. There was nothing I could do but wait. The trooper seemed to sense my frustration. "Look," she said, "I know this is hard. But the best thing you can do right now is let us work. Go back to the maintenance station, get some real food, maybe try to sleep. We'll call you as soon as we have any updates." I didn't want to leave. Didn't want to sit in a warm building while Torin was out there somewhere, injured, or worse. But I also knew she was right. I wasn't trained for this. I couldn't help with the investigation. All I could do was wait. I rode back to the maintenance station with one of the junior troopers, a quiet kid who didn't try to make small talk. I was grateful for that. When we arrived, the maintenance worker had hot food waiting. Soup and sandwiches, simple but substantial. I forced myself to eat, knowing I'd need the energy. Then I found a corner with a worn couch and tried to rest. Sleep didn't come. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every decision I'd made, every moment where I could have done something different. If I'd been faster getting back to the truck, if I'd called for help sooner, if I'd never opened that tanker in the first place. The what-ifs were endless and useless, but I couldn't stop thinking them. Hours passed. The sun tracked across the sky, visible through the small windows of the station. I got up periodically to pace, to drink more coffee, to check my phone for messages that never came. The maintenance worker tried to engage me in conversation a few times, but eventually gave up and left me alone. It was late afternoon when the trooper finally called. "We found something," she said without preamble. "Can you get back to the scene?" I was in the trooper's vehicle 5 minutes later, speeding north on roads that were clearer now, but still treacherous. The sun was low on the horizon, painting everything in shades of orange and gold. We arrived at the tanker to find twice as many vehicles as before. Someone had set up portable lights, bright halogen floods that turned the crime scene into something out of a movie. The trooper led me past the tanker to a spot maybe 30 yards into the trees. There was a trail there, partially obscured by snow, but visible if you knew what to look for. Boot prints. Lots of them. "They found this about an hour ago," the trooper said. Followed it for about 2 miles into the woods. It leads to an old hunting camp. Abandoned, or at least it was supposed to be. Someone's been using it. Is Torin there? I asked. We don't know yet. We've got a tactical team staging for entry, but there's something else you need to know. She pulled out her tablet again, showed me a new photo. It was a close-up of tire tracks in the snow. These tracks match the pickup that chased you last night. And we found something interesting about half a mile from the camp. She swiped to another photo. It showed a cleared area in the forest, maybe 50 feet across, and in the center of that clearing were 3 trucks, not pickups, full-size semis, all of them with their trailers detached, all of them sitting on blocks like they'd been there for months. Those are our missing driver's rigs, she said quietly. All 3 of them. I stared at the photo, feeling ice form in my veins. You think the drivers are at that camp? If they're alive, yes. The tactical team is moving in within the hour. I need you to stay here and wait. If we find survivors, we're going to need positive IDs. I nodded, unable to speak. The sun was setting now, the temperature dropping fast. I watched as the tactical team geared up, checking weapons and radios. They moved with practiced efficiency, spreading out into the forest in a loose formation. Then they were gone, swallowed by the trees and the gathering darkness. The wait was excruciating. 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. I stood near one of the portable heaters, hands shoved deep in my pockets, watching the tree line. The troopers around me were tense, listening to chatter on their radios. I couldn't make out most of it, just fragments, contact, structure visible, moving to entry point. Then, after another agonizing wait, a single word came through clearly. Suspects, plural, and then, after a brief pause, survivors. I felt my knees go weak. The trooper grabbed my arm, steadied me. They found them, 3 individuals all alive. They're bringing them out now. It took another 20 minutes before I saw movement in the trees. Flashlight beams cutting through the darkness, then figures emerging, wrapped in emergency blankets, supported by tactical officers. I scanned their faces desperately, looking for Torin. The first person wasn't him. A woman, maybe in her 30s, with dark hair and a blank, shocked expression. The second wasn't him either. A man, older, with a thick beard and hollow eyes. But the third figure, that was Torin. He looked terrible. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. He was limping badly, supported on both sides by officers. But he was alive. He was walking. I started forward, but the trooper held me back. Let the medics check him first. They loaded all 3 survivors into ambulances that had been standing by. I watched as they worked on Torin, checking vitals, starting IVs, asking questions he seemed too exhausted to answer. Finally, one of the medics looked over at me. Are you Magnus? I nodded. He wants to talk to you. I approached the ambulance carefully. Torin was lying on a gurney, oxygen mask over his face. When he saw me, he reached up and pulled the mask aside. Magnus. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. For what? For getting you into this. They were using me as bait. I figured that out, I said. Don't worry about it. You're safe now. He shook his head weakly. You don't understand. There are more. More what? More camps. More crews. This wasn't just one group. It's organized. They've been running this operation for years. The medic gently pushed me back. He needs to rest. You can talk more at the hospital. I stepped away and watched as they closed the ambulance doors. The tactical team was bringing suspects out now, 4 people in handcuffs, faces concealed by hoods. I didn't try to get a look at them, didn't want to see the people who'd done this. The lead trooper came over looking exhausted but satisfied. We got them, all 4 members of the crew, and we found records at the camp, names, dates, cargo manifests. This is bigger than we thought." "How much bigger?" She gestured at the forest. "We think there are at least 3 other camps operating along the Dalton and the Dempster Highway. This crew was just one cell. We're coordinating with Canadian authorities now. This is going to take months to untangle, but we've got them. The main crew anyway. And your friend, he's going to make it. The doctors think he'll make a full recovery." I felt something break loose in my chest. Relief, maybe. Or just the release of tension I'd been carrying since the moment I first saw that tanker blocking the road. "Thank you," I managed to say. The trooper nodded. "You did good work, Magnus. You saved his life." I wasn't sure about that, but I was too tired to argue. They let me ride in the convoy back to Fairbanks, following behind the ambulances. The drive took hours, and I spent most of it staring out the window at the endless darkness of the Alaskan winter, thinking about everything that had happened. Everything that could have gone wrong, but didn't. When we finally reached the hospital, they let me see Torin briefly. He was sedated, resting, but stable. The doctors said he'd suffered hypothermia, dehydration, and several broken ribs, but nothing that wouldn't heal. I stood by his bed for a few minutes, watching him breathe. Then I left him to rest and went to find a hotel room. I slept for 16 hours straight, dreamless and deep. When I woke up, there were dozens of messages on my phone. From Edda, from the police, from the trucking company. But I ignored them all and went to get breakfast. Sat in a diner and ate pancakes and drank bad coffee and tried to feel normal again. It didn't work. Nothing felt normal anymore. 3 days after they brought Torin out of that forest, I was sitting in a conference room at the state police headquarters in Fairbanks. The room was small and sterile, white walls and fluorescent lights that made everything look washed out. Across from me sat 2 detectives, both wearing expressions of careful neutrality that told me this wasn't a casual conversation. They'd been asking questions for the past hour, going over my statement again, clarifying details, pushing for anything I might have forgotten. I'd told them everything I could remember. The tanker blocking the road, the supplies inside, the person with the rifle, the chase through the storm. They'd recorded every word, taken notes, compared my account with the physical evidence they'd collected. Now we were getting to the part they really wanted to talk about. The part that didn't make sense. The lead detective, a man named Harker with thinning hair and tired eyes, leaned forward. "Let's talk about the other drivers again, the ones we found at the camp." I nodded. "What about them? You said you'd never seen them before that night. Never crossed paths with them at truck stops. Never heard their names on the CB." "That's right." Harker glanced at his partner, then back at me. "That's interesting, because according to their statements, they'd all been missing for different lengths of time. The woman, she disappeared 6 months ago. The older man with the beard, he'd been gone for almost a year. But here's what's strange." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos, driver's licenses for the 3 survivors, all valid, all current. These licenses were issued within the past 3 months, which means someone was maintaining their identities while they were being held at that camp. I stared at the photos, trying to understand what he was telling me. Why would they do that? "We don't know," Harker said. "But it suggests this operation was more sophisticated than we initially thought. Someone was keeping these drivers alive for a reason. Not just holding them for ransom, but maintaining their paperwork, keeping their records active in the system. Like they were planning to use them for something. Use them how? That's what we're trying to figure out." He pulled out more documents, spread them across the table. "We've been going through the records we found at the camp. Cargo manifests, shipping schedules, route maps. This crew wasn't just hijacking random trucks. They were targeting specific shipments. High-value goods, yes, but also drivers with certain qualifications. CDL endorsements for hazardous materials, tanker certifications, security clearances for restricted routes. I felt a chill run down my spine. You think they were building something? Not building, Harker said quietly. Recruiting, or attempting to. The survivors all reported being interrogated, asked detailed questions about their backgrounds, their roots, their contacts in the industry. The crew was gathering intelligence. For what purpose, we're still investigating. What about the 4 people you arrested? I asked. What are they saying? Nothing, the other detective said. Her name was Parrish, and she'd been mostly silent until now. All 4 of them lawyered up immediately. We've got them on kidnapping, assault, theft, conspiracy. The charges will keep them locked up for decades. But in terms of getting information about the larger operation, we've hit a wall. So you think there are more people involved? More than just those 4? Harker nodded slowly. The evidence suggests this was part of a larger network. We've identified at least 2 other camps along the Dalton and Dempster highways. Both abandoned by the time we got there, but the infrastructure was there. Solar panels, satellite equipment, stockpiles of supplies. Someone invested serious money into setting this up. I thought about that tanker sitting in the middle of the road, about the calculated way they'd used Torin as bait, about how close I'd come to ending up in one of those camps myself. Do you think I'm in danger? I asked. Do you think they'll come after me? Parrish and Harker exchanged a look. We don't have any specific threats, Parrish said carefully, but we're recommending precautions. Vary your routes when possible. Don't stop at isolated locations. Report any suspicious activity immediately. We've also flagged your information in our system. If anything comes up, we'll notify you right away. That wasn't exactly reassuring. I left the police station feeling more unsettled than when I'd arrived. The investigation had answered some questions, but it had opened up dozens more. Who was behind this operation? What were they really after? And most importantly, were they still out there, watching, waiting for another opportunity? I went to visit Torin at the hospital that afternoon. He'd been moved out of intensive care and into a regular room. When I walked in, he was sitting up in bed, eating lunch from a tray. He looked better than the last time I'd seen him. The swelling in his face had gone down, and some color had returned to his skin. But his eyes were different. Haunted, like he'd seen something that changed him fundamentally. Magnus, he said when he saw me. His voice was stronger now, but still rough around the edges. Pull up a chair. I sat down next to the bed. How are you feeling? Better? Doctors say I can go home in a few days. He set down his fork, looked at me seriously. I heard you've been talking to the police. Yeah, I said. They've got a lot of questions. I bet. He was quiet for a moment, staring at his hands. Then he said, they asked me to go through everything that happened, from the moment my truck broke down to when the tactical team found us. Must have been rough, it was. But there's something I didn't tell them, something I'm not sure they'd believe. I leaned forward. What do you mean? Torin glanced at the door, making sure it was closed. Then he lowered his voice. The night before they grabbed me, I got a call. On my personal cell. I almost didn't answer because the number was blocked. But I did, and the person on the other end, they knew everything about me. My route, my cargo, my schedule. They knew where I was going to be and when. I felt my stomach tighten. What did they want? They offered me money, a lot of money. Said if I pulled over at a specific location and let them take my cargo, they'd pay me $50,000. No violence, no trouble, just a business transaction. What did you say? I said no. Of course I said no. I'm not going to help someone steal from my company. But here's the thing. They didn't sound surprised when I refused. They sounded like they were expecting it. Like they'd already planned for that response. And then, less than an hour later, my engine seized up. My truck just died in the middle of the highway, right where they said I should pull over. I stared at him. You think they sabotaged your truck? I don't think it, Magnus. I know it. I've been a mechanic for 30 years. I know engines. And what happened to mine, that wasn't mechanical failure. That was deliberate. Someone tampered with it before I left Fairbanks. They set me up to break down exactly where they wanted me to. Did you tell the police this? He shook his head. Not yet, because if I'm right, if they can get to our trucks while they're being serviced, while they're sitting in secure lots, then this is bigger than highway robbery. This is infiltration. I sat back in my chair, processing what he was saying. It made a terrible kind of sense. The sophisticated operation, the intelligence gathering, the specific targeting of drivers. If they had people working inside trucking companies, inside maintenance facilities, they could control every aspect of a hijacking. They could choose their targets, sabotage their vehicles, know exactly when and where they'd be vulnerable. How many people would it take to run an operation like that? I asked. Torrin shrugged. Dozens, maybe. Mechanics, dispatchers, lot supervisors, anyone with access to trucks and shipping information. And the scary part is we'd never know. They'd just look like regular employees doing their jobs. Until one day, a truck breaks down in exactly the wrong place. I thought about my own rig, about the maintenance facility I used in Fairbanks, the mechanics I trusted, about Etta routing my trips, knowing my schedule down to the hour. I trusted these people with my life, but now I was wondering if I should. You need to tell the police, I said. They need to know about this. I will, Torrin said. But I wanted to tell you first, because you're still driving, Magnus. You're still out there on those roads. And if I'm right about this, if they've got people on the inside, then none of us are safe. Not until they find everyone involved. I left the hospital feeling paranoid in a way I'd never experienced before. Every person I passed on the street felt like a potential threat. Every car that followed me for more than a block felt suspicious. I knew it was irrational, knew I was letting fear get the better of me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I returned to my rig the next day. It had been released from evidence, fully processed and cleared. The company had repaired the bullet damage and replaced the cracked mirror. Mechanically, everything checked out. But I spent 2 hours going over every inch of it anyway, looking for anything that seemed wrong. Any sign of tampering. I didn't find anything, but that didn't make me feel better. Etta called me that afternoon. You ready to get back on the road? She asked. I've got a light load heading south. Anchorage delivery, easy run, good weather. Give you a chance to ease back into it. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say no, wanted to take some time off, maybe find a different line of work, but I'd been driving for 17 years. This was all I knew. And I wasn't going to let fear take that away from me. Yeah, I said, I'm ready. Good. I'm sending the details now. And Magnus, be careful out there. Always am. I picked up the load the next morning. Standard freight, nothing unusual. The route took me south on the Parks Highway, away from the Dalton, away from the wilderness where everything had gone wrong. I should have felt relieved, but instead I felt exposed. Every truck stop I passed, I wondered if someone was watching. Every vehicle that pulled up behind me felt like a threat. I completed the delivery without incident, then another, and another. Weeks passed. The investigation continued. The police made more arrests, shut down 2 more camps. They found evidence of the inside operation Torrin had described. 3 mechanics and a dispatcher were charged with conspiracy. The network was real, and it was bigger than anyone had imagined. But they still hadn't found the person at the top, the one running the whole operation. Etta called me one evening in late February. I'd just finished a run and was parked at a truck stop outside Fairbanks. "Magnus, I need to tell you something." I could hear tension in her voice. "What's wrong?" "I got a call today from someone I didn't recognize. They asked about you, specifically about you." "What kind of questions?" "Your schedule, your routes, what kind of cargo you usually haul." She paused. I didn't give them anything. Told them I couldn't discuss driver information. "But Magnus, they knew things. They knew you'd been involved in the Dalton incident. They knew you'd testified to the police. It felt like they were checking up on you." "Did you report it?" "Of course. Called the detectives immediately. They're looking into it. But I wanted you to know, in case anything happens, in case you see anything suspicious." I looked around the truck stop, at the dozens of rigs parked in neat rows, at the drivers coming and going. Any one of them could be watching me. Anyone could be part of this. "Thanks for telling me," I said. "I'll be careful." There was a long silence on the line. Then Etta said quietly, "Maybe you should take some time off. Go somewhere warm. Let this blow over. I can't do that." "You're not responsible for catching these people, Magnus. That's the police's job. Your job is to stay alive, I know. But if I run, if I let them scare me off the road, then they win. And I can't live with that. Just promise me you'll be smart about this. Promise me you won't take unnecessary risks, I promise." But as I ended the call, I wasn't sure if that was a promise I could keep. Because the truth was, every time I got behind the wheel now, it felt like a risk. Every decision, every route, every stop. All of it felt dangerous in a way it never had before. I started varying my patterns, changed truck stops, altered my routes, never stayed in the same place twice in a row. I installed additional cameras on my rig, upgraded my locks, carried more emergency supplies. I was turning into someone I didn't recognize, someone constantly looking over his shoulder, someone who couldn't trust anyone. 3 months after the incident, I got a text message from an unknown number. Just 3 words. "We're still watching." I reported it immediately. The police traced it to a burner phone, purchased with cash, already destroyed. Dead end. But the message had achieved its purpose. It reminded me that whoever was behind this operation, they were still out there. Still active. Still targeting drivers on the northern roads. I think about that night on the Dalton Highway constantly. About the choices I made, the things I saw, about how close I came to ending up like those other drivers, trapped in a camp somewhere, being used as a pawn in someone else's game. Torin recovered fully. He's back on the road now, though he sticks to southern routes. Won't go north of Fairbanks anymore. Can't say I blame him. We talk sometimes, compare notes, share information about suspicious activity. We've both become amateur investigators in a way, always watching, always questioning. The police investigation is ongoing. They make arrests periodically, shut down operations, recover stolen cargo. But for every person they catch, it feels like 2 more slip through their fingers. The network adapts, evolves, finds new ways to operate. And I keep driving. Because this is what I do. This is who I am. But I'm not naive anymore. I know what's out there on those lonely highways. I know that sometimes the biggest danger isn't the weather or the road conditions. Sometimes it's the people who are waiting for you to let your guard down. Just for a moment, just long enough. I'm heading north again next week. Back to the Dalton Highway, back to the oil fields. Etta tried to talk me out of it, said I didn't have to take the run. But someone has to do it. Someone has to keep those supply lines moving, and I'd rather it be someone who knows what to watch for. Someone who survived it before. I don't know if they're still watching me. Don't know if that text message was a real threat or just psychological warfare. But I do know this. Every time I pass that spot on the highway, the place where I found that tanker blocking the road, I slow down, look carefully at the shadows, make sure nothing's waiting there in the darkness. Because the thing about that night, the thing that keeps me awake sometimes, isn't what happened. It's what almost happened. How easily it could have gone differently. How I could have been the one locked in that trailer, hypothermic and terrified, waiting for someone to either save me or finish me off. The northern lights are visible tonight, dancing across the sky in ribbons of green and purple. Beautiful and cold and indifferent to human suffering. I used to love watching them. Now they just remind me of how isolated we are up here, how far from help, how easy it would be to disappear. I finish my coffee, check my mirrors one more time, and start the engine. The road ahead is dark and empty. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of my headlights, someone might be waiting. Or maybe I'm just being paranoid. Maybe the danger has passed, but I don't believe that. Not anymore. Because Torin was right about one thing. They got to his truck before he ever left Fairbanks. They sabotaged it in a secure lot, surrounded by cameras and fences and people who were supposed to be trustworthy. If they could do that to him, they can do it to anyone. They can do it to me. And maybe they already have. Maybe right now, while I'm sitting here in this truck stop, someone is under my trailer, attaching something to my brake line or my fuel system. Something that will fail at exactly the wrong moment, in exactly the wrong place. Maybe the next time I head north, I won't make it back. The engine is running smoothly, all my gauges are reading normal, everything seems fine. But I've learned that fine is just another word for not yet. I put the truck in gear and pull out of the lot, merging onto the highway heading north. The road stretches out ahead of me, disappearing into the darkness. And somewhere in that darkness, I know they're out there, watching, waiting, planning their next move. I tighten my grip on the wheel and keep driving, because that's all any of us can do. Keep moving forward, stay alert, trust nothing, and hope that when the next trap is sprung, we're smart enough or lucky enough to see it coming. The Dalton Highway doesn't forgive mistakes. I learned that lesson the hard way. Now I just have to hope I live long enough to remember it. The Dempster Highway is 736 kilometers of gravel road connecting the Yukon Territory to the Northwest Territories, running north from Dawson City all the way to Inuvik. It's the only public road in Canada that crosses the Arctic Circle, and for 8 months of the year, it's one of the most dangerous highways in North America. Not because of traffic, there's barely any, but because of the distances between services, the extreme weather, and the fact that if something goes wrong, you're hours away from help. Sometimes days. I've been running freight up the Dempster for 12 years now, and I can tell you without exaggeration that this road demands respect. It doesn't matter how experienced you are, how well maintained your equipment is, or how carefully you plan your route. The Dempster will find your weakness and exploit it. I've seen good drivers make one small mistake and pay for it with their lives. That's just the reality of operating this far north, in conditions this extreme. My name is Clint Varner, and I haul supplies to the mining operations and communities scattered across the Northern Territories. Construction materials, food shipments, fuel, mechanical parts, whatever needs to get from the south to places most people have never heard of. It's steady work, pays well enough, and I've gotten used to the isolation. The long stretches of empty road, the endless forests of stunted spruce, the way the sun barely sets in summer and barely rises in winter. Most drivers won't touch the Dempster. Too remote, too risky, too many things that can go wrong. But I've always figured that's exactly why I'm good at it. I don't mind being alone. Don't need constant stimulation or companionship. Out here, it's just me and the road, and the knowledge that I'm one of the few people willing to do this job. There's a strange pride in that, even when the work is brutal. It was early March 2023 when I started noticing the changes at the Eagle Plains station. Eagle Plains is roughly halfway up the Dempster, the only service station for hundreds of kilometers in either direction. It's not much to look at, just a small hotel, a garage, a restaurant, and fuel pumps. But for drivers like me, it's essential infrastructure. A place to refuel, grab a meal, maybe catch a few hours of sleep before continuing north or south. The station had been run by the same family for decades, but I'd heard through the driver network that ownership had changed hands. New operator, someone from outside the territories who'd bought the place and was fixing it up. I didn't think much of it at the time. Ownership changes happen. As long as the fuel pumps worked and the coffee was hot, I didn't care who was running the place. But when I pulled into Eagle Plains that morning, something felt different. Wrong, maybe. Though, I couldn't have told you exactly what it was. Just a feeling in my gut, the kind you learn to trust after enough years on the road. The station looked cleaner than I remembered. Fresh paint on the buildings, new signage, the parking lot graded and graveled. Someone had clearly invested money in the place, but it was quiet. Too quiet. Usually there'd be at least one or two other trucks parked here, drivers taking advantage of the services. Today, there was nothing. Just my rig and an old pickup truck parked near the main building. I pulled up to the fuel pumps and shut down the engine. The silence that followed was absolute. No wind, no birds, just the ticking of my cooling engine and the crunch of my boots on gravel as I climbed down from the cab. The air was cold, maybe -20. Cold enough that my breath came out in thick clouds. I pulled my collar up and walked toward the main building, intending to pay for fuel and maybe grab something to eat. The door was unlocked, and when I pushed it open, a bell chimed somewhere in the back. The interior had been renovated too. New flooring, fresh paint, updated lighting. It looked more like a boutique hotel than a highway service station, but something about it felt sterile, almost artificial. Like someone had tried too hard to make it welcoming, and had somehow achieved the opposite effect. Behind the counter stood a man I'd never seen before, late 40s, maybe early 50s, with graying hair and a neat beard. He was wearing a clean flannel shirt and jeans, and when he saw me, he smiled. The smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "You must be passing through," he said. His voice was pleasant enough, but there was something rehearsed about it. "Looking for fuel, yeah," I said. "And maybe some food if the kitchen's open." "Kitchen's always open." He came around the counter, extended his hand. "Jorah McCady. I'm the new owner here. Clint Varner." We shook hands. His grip was firm, but his palm was soft, not the hands of someone who'd spent much time doing manual labor. "I took over the station about 6 months ago," Jorah continued. "Been doing a lot of upgrades, trying to make it more comfortable for drivers like yourself." "It looks good," I said, though I wasn't sure I meant it. "How much for a full tank?" He quoted me a price that was higher than I expected, but not outrageous given the location. I handed over my company card and he processed the payment while I looked around the lobby area. That's when I noticed the photographs on the wall. They were old, black and white, and faded color prints, showing the station at various points in its history. Groups of people standing in front of the building, drivers posing next to their trucks, winter scenes with snowdrifts piled higher than the roof. But what caught my attention was how many of the photos had been altered. Not obviously, but if you looked closely, you could see where faces had been scratched out or covered with whiteout. Entire people removed from group shots, leaving strange gaps in the composition. I was about to ask Jorah about it when another person emerged from the back hallway. A woman, younger than Jorah, maybe in her 30s, wearing an apron and carrying a menu. "Kitchen's ready when you are," she said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "This is Wynne Harper," Jorah said. "She runs the kitchen. Best cook on the Dempster." Wynne didn't respond to the compliment, just handed me the menu and walked back toward what I assumed was the dining area. I followed her, leaving Jorah at the counter. The dining room was small, maybe 6 tables, all empty. The windows looked out over the highway, offering a view of nothing but snow and stunted trees stretching to the horizon. Wynne gestured to a table near the window and I sat down, studying the menu. Standard fare, burgers, sandwiches, soup, nothing fancy. But the prices were listed in handwritten ink, and I noticed that several items had been crossed out and replaced with different prices. Recent changes, by the look of it. I ordered a burger and coffee. Wynne wrote it down without speaking and disappeared into the kitchen. I sat there in the silence, looking out at my truck, at the empty highway, at the complete absence of any other human activity. Eagle Plains had never been a busy place, but this level of isolation felt wrong. Where were the other drivers? Where were the locals who usually stopped by for supplies? It was like the entire station existed in a bubble, cut off from the normal flow of traffic that should have been passing through. My coffee arrived first, brought out by Wynne without a word. She set it down and left before I could thank her. I took a sip. It was good, strong, and hot, exactly what I needed. But as I drank, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about this place, about Jorah and his too-perfect smile, about Wynne and her complete lack of effect, about the defaced photographs on the wall in the absence of other customers. I told myself I was being paranoid, told myself that new ownership always changed the atmosphere of a place, and that I just needed to adjust to it. But my instincts, the ones that had kept me alive on this road for 12 years, were screaming that I should finish my meal, fuel up, and get the hell out of here as fast as possible. The burger came out 20 minutes later. Wynne set the plate down without meeting my eyes. "Anything else?" she asked. "No, this is good, thanks." She nodded and started to leave, but I stopped her. "Hey, can I ask you something?" She turned back, expression neutral. "Sure. Has it been slow lately? I haven't seen any other trucks." Her face didn't change, but I saw her hands tighten slightly on the apron. "It's been slow," she said. "Winter's always slow. But this seems slower than usual. I come through here pretty regularly and there's usually at least a few rigs parked overnight." She glanced toward the lobby, toward where Jorah was still working at the counter. Then she looked back at me. "Some drivers don't stop here anymore," she said quietly. "They fuel up in Dawson City and try to make it all the way through to Inuvik without stopping." "Why would they do that? This is the only station for hundreds of kilometers." "I know." She seemed like she wanted to say more, but then Jorah appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay?" he asked, still with that smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Fine," Wynne said quickly. "Just checking if he needed anything else." "I'm good," I said. She nodded and hurried past Jorah into the kitchen. He watched her go, then turned to me. "How's the food?" "Good, real good. Glad to hear it. Let me know if you need anything." He disappeared back into the lobby, leaving me alone in the dining room. I ate slowly, thinking about what Wynne had said. Drivers avoiding Eagle Plains. That didn't make sense from a practical standpoint. The distances on the Dempster were too great to skip the only refueling stop. Unless something had happened here that made drivers willing to risk running out of fuel rather than stopping. I finished my meal and walked back to the lobby. Jorah was behind the counter again, working on a computer. I settled my bill and was about to leave when I noticed a bulletin board on the wall near the door. It was covered with business cards, announcements, a few faded posters advertising services in Dawson City and Inuvik. But pinned in the center was something that caught my attention: a missing person flyer. The photo showed a man in his 30s smiling at the camera, standing next to a big rig. The text below identified him as a truck driver last seen heading north on the Dempster in September 2022. Contact information for his family was listed at the bottom. I stared at the flyer, feeling ice form in my stomach. September 2022 was 6 months ago, right around the time Jorah said he'd taken over the station. I turned to Jorah. "Did you know this guy? The one on the missing person flyer?" Jorah looked up from his computer, followed my gaze to the bulletin board. His expression didn't change. "No. That flyer was here when I bought the place. Police came around asking questions, but I couldn't help them. I wasn't here when he went missing. Do they know what happened to him?" Jorah shrugged. "Lot of things can happen on the Dempster. Maybe he went off the road. Maybe his truck broke down and he tried to walk for help. It's easy to get disoriented in a whiteout. Easy to freeze to death before anyone finds you." "That's true," I said. But something about the way he said it bothered me. The casual dismissal, the lack of concern. Like missing drivers were just a normal hazard of operating this far north. Which, to be fair, they were. But usually people showed a little more empathy when talking about someone who'd probably died alone in the wilderness. I thanked Jorah for the meal and headed back out to my truck. The sun was higher now, casting long shadows across the snow. I climbed into the cab and sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, engine still off. Something wasn't right here. I couldn't put my finger on exactly what it was, but every instinct I had was telling me to leave, to get back on the road and put as much distance between myself and Eagle Plains as possible. But I also knew I needed to fuel up. My next run was taking me all the way to Inuvik, and I didn't have enough diesel to make it without stopping here. I'd planned to grab some sleep before heading north, maybe spend the night in one of the hotel rooms. But now that plan seemed foolish, dangerous even. I started the engine, pulled up to the fuel pumps, and began filling my tanks. While the diesel flowed, I did a walk-around inspection of my rig. Checked the tires, the lights, the trailer connections. Everything looked good. No signs of tampering, no mechanical issues. I was just being paranoid, that's what I told myself. But as I stood there in the cold watching the fuel gauge climb, I couldn't stop thinking about that missing person flyer, about drivers avoiding this station, about Wynn's quiet warning and Jorah's artificial smile, about the defaced photographs on the wall, faces scratched out like someone was trying to erase them from history. The fuel pump clicked off. I replaced the nozzle, secured my tank caps, and climbed back into the cab. I should have left then. Should have put Eagle Plains in my rearview mirror and focused on the road ahead. But something made me pause. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was concern for other drivers who might stop here without knowing something was wrong. Or maybe it was just the stubborn part of me that refused to leave without understanding what I'd walked into. I pulled my truck away from the pumps, but instead of heading back to the highway, I drove around to the back of the station complex. There was a large garage building back here, doors closed, no activity visible. Next to it was a storage shed and what looked like living quarters, probably where Jorah and Wynn stayed. And beyond that, partially hidden by a snowdrift, was something that made my blood run cold. Another truck. A big rig parked at an angle, partially covered by snow. The trailer was still attached, and from what I could see, it had been sitting there for months. Long enough for the snow to pile up around the wheels, for ice to form on the windows. Long enough that whoever had been driving it was long gone. I put my truck in park and climbed down, walking slowly toward the abandoned rig. My boots crunched through the crusty snow, each step taking me closer to something I was increasingly certain I didn't want to see. When I reached the truck, I brushed snow away from the driver's side door. The company logo was still visible, faded but readable. and below it, in smaller letters, a name. The same name from the missing person flyer. I stood there in the cold, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This was his truck, the missing driver's truck. It had been here the whole time, parked behind the station, slowly being buried by snow, which meant Jorah had lied to me. He'd said he didn't know anything about the missing driver, but the man's truck was right here, on property Jorah owned. There was no way he didn't know about it. I pulled out my phone to take a picture, to call the police, to do something, but there was no signal. I was too far from any cell tower. The satellite phone was back in my cab, but before I could go get it, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around and found Jorah standing 20 feet away watching me. The smile was gone. I didn't move, didn't reach for anything in my pockets, didn't make any sudden gestures. Just stood there with my hand still on the door of the buried truck, watching Jorah watch me. The distance between us felt both too far and too close at the same time. He was blocking my direct path back to my rig, but he wasn't advancing. Just standing there in his clean flannel shirt and jeans, hands loose at his sides, face expressionless now that the artificial friendliness had dropped away. The silence stretched out between us, broken only by the faint whistle of wind across the snow and the distant creak of metal contracting in the cold. I could see my breath forming clouds in the air, could feel my heart hammering against my ribs. Every instinct I'd developed over 12 years on the Dempster was screaming at me to run, but I forced myself to stay calm, to think like a trucker instead of like prey. "You weren't supposed to come back here," Jorah said finally. His voice was different now, flatter, no pretense of hospitality, the casual tone of someone discussing a minor inconvenience rather than a potentially lethal situation. I kept my own voice steady, conversational, just doing a walk-around, checking my rig. "That's a lie," he said. "Your rig is parked on the other side of the building. You came back here looking for something specific." The buried truck caught my attention, I admitted. Hard to miss. Jorah nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something he'd already suspected. That's unfortunate. For both of us. I watched him carefully, trying to read his intentions. He wasn't armed, at least not visibly. No gun in his hands, no knife, nothing obvious. But that didn't mean he wasn't dangerous. Out here, isolation was its own kind of weapon. We were hundreds of kilometers from the nearest town, from the nearest RCMP detachment, from anyone who could help. If something happened to me, if I simply disappeared, it would be days before anyone even noticed I was missing. Weeks before they started looking. And by then, Jorah could have my truck buried under snow just like this one. Could have my body hidden somewhere in the endless wilderness surrounding us. "Look," I said, keeping my hands visible, non-threatening. "I don't want any trouble. I'm just passing through. Just need to fuel up and get back on the road." That was the plan, wasn't it? Jorah's expression didn't change. "But now you've seen something you weren't supposed to see." And that creates a problem. It doesn't have to be a problem. I don't know anything. Don't know what happened here, don't know whose truck this is. "Another lie," he said. "You saw the missing person flyer. You made the connection. I can see it in your face." He was right, of course. But I wasn't about to admit that. "So what happens now?" I asked. Jorah seemed to consider the question. He looked past me at the buried truck, then back at my face. Then, unexpectedly, he sighed. "Come inside, we need to talk." That was the last thing I wanted to do. Going back inside that building, away from my truck, away from any chance of escape, seemed like a phenomenally bad idea. But I also didn't see many alternatives. If I ran now, if I tried to make it back to my rig, Jorah could easily cut me off. And even if I made it, even if I got the engine started, he could disable my truck while I was trying to leave. Slash the tires, block the exit, any number of things that would leave me stranded here. At least, inside, there might be a chance to understand what was happening, to find a way out of this that didn't end with me frozen in the wilderness. I followed Jorah back around the building, keeping a careful distance between us. My mind was racing, cataloging every detail, every potential weapon, every possible escape route. The garage to my left had a side door, probably unlocked. The main building had windows, but they were small and high, not easy to get through quickly. My truck was visible now, parked where I'd left it, engine still running. That was good, at least I hadn't turned it off. If I needed to run, I could be inside and moving in seconds. But Jorah didn't head toward my truck. He walked to the main entrance of the station, held the door open, and waited for me to enter. I hesitated at the threshold. Every fiber of my being was telling me this was a mistake. But I also knew that running now, without understanding what I was dealing with, might be an even bigger mistake. I stepped inside. The lobby looked exactly the same as it had 30 minutes ago. Clean, well lit, almost unnaturally normal. But now that I was looking for it, I could see other details I'd missed before. The fresh paint on the walls didn't quite cover some darker stains underneath. The new flooring had been installed recently, probably within the last few months. And the bulletin board, the one with the missing person flyer, had several other papers pinned to it. Papers I hadn't noticed before because I hadn't been looking closely enough. Jorah locked the door behind us. The click of the deadbolt was loud in the quiet room. He gestured toward the dining area. "Sit down, I'm not going to hurt you, but we need to have a conversation." I moved into the dining room, chose the same table I'd sat at earlier. Positioned myself so I could see both the entrance and the windows. Jorah disappeared into the back for a moment, and I heard him talking to someone in a low voice. Wynn, probably. Then he returned carrying 2 cups of coffee, set one in front of me, and sat down across the table. I didn't touch the coffee, didn't trust it. Jorah noticed but didn't comment. Instead, he wrapped his hands around his own cup and stared out the window at the empty highway. "You want to know about that truck?" he said. It wasn't a question. "I want to know what happened to the driver," I said, "and why his truck is still here 6 months after he was reported missing." Jorah took a slow sip of coffee, still looking out the window. "I bought this place last September. Got it for a good price. Too good a price, really, but I didn't ask too many questions. The previous owners wanted out. Wanted to sell fast and move south. I thought I was getting a deal. When I arrived to take possession, that truck was already here. Parked behind the garage, just like you saw it. The driver was gone, just the truck, abandoned, locked up tight. I called the RCMP, reported it. They came out, looked around, filed a report, but there was nothing to find. No sign of the driver, no indication of what had happened. They figured he'd wandered off, got lost in bad weather, died somewhere out in the bush. Happens more than people realize. That's convenient, I said. Jorah's eyes flicked to me. What's that supposed to mean? It means his truck is on your property, and you're claiming you don't know anything about what happened to him. Jorah set down his coffee cup. I didn't say I don't know anything. I said I wasn't here when it happened. There's a difference. So what do you know? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "The previous owners, they ran this place for 23 years. Family business. Father and son, mostly. They had a reputation in the driver community. People said this was a good place to stop. Fair prices, decent food, reliable service. But something changed about 2 years ago. Drivers started avoiding the place. Word got around that people who stopped here sometimes had problems. Mechanical failures. Missing cargo. Accidents on the road after they left. Nothing you could prove. nothing that looked deliberate. But enough that drivers started fueling up elsewhere. I thought about what Wynne had said, about drivers trying to make it through without stopping. Why would the owners do that, I asked. Sabotage their own customers? Jorah shrugged. Money, probably. Insurance fraud, maybe. Steal cargo, sell it, claim it was lost. Or maybe they had arrangements with certain salvage companies. Disable a truck, let it get towed to a specific garage, split the repair costs. I don't know the details. I just know that by the time I bought this place, the reputation was already damaged. And then that driver went missing and everything got worse. Why did you buy it if you knew it had problems? Because I thought I could fix it. Jorah's voice had an edge now, defensive. I thought I could clean the place up, run it honestly, rebuild the reputation. I didn't know about the extent of the previous problems. Didn't know about the missing driver until after the sale went through. And by then, I'd already sunk every dollar I had into this place. I couldn't just walk away. That still doesn't explain why his truck is still here, I said. Why haven't you moved it? Sold it? Reported it again? Because I'm afraid, Jorah said quietly. Of what? Of whoever killed him. I felt ice slide down my spine. You think he was killed? Jorah leaned forward. 2 months after I took over, I found something. I was cleaning out one of the storage sheds, getting rid of junk the previous owners had left behind. And I found a toolbox, hidden behind some old equipment. Inside were personal effects. Wallets, driver's licenses, watches, rings, things that belonged to drivers who'd gone missing over the years. Not just that one guy from September. At least 6 other people, maybe more. All of them drivers who'd stopped here and then disappeared. I stared at him. You found evidence of multiple murders and you didn't go to the police. I tried, Jorah said. I called the RCMP, told them what I'd found. They came out, collected the box, took statements. But then nothing happened. Weeks went by. No updates. No arrests. I called back several times. Finally got through to a detective who told me the investigation was ongoing, but they had no suspects. The previous owners had sold the place and disappeared. Vanished completely. No forwarding address, no contact information, like they'd planned it from the beginning. Sell the station, take the money, disappear before anyone connected them to the missing drivers. So you're running a service station that's sitting on top of a mass grave, basically. And you just decided to keep operating like nothing was wrong? Jorah's face hardened. What else was I supposed to do? I'd put everything into this place. I have staff, responsibilities. And I convinced myself that with the previous owners gone, the danger was over. That as long as I ran things honestly, kept everything above board, there wouldn't be any more problems. But you still have that driver's truck parked out back. Still have evidence sitting on your property. I can't move it, Jorah said. The RCMP told me to leave everything as is, said it's part of their investigation, but it's been 6 months and they haven't done anything with it. Just left it there, slowly getting buried. And every time a driver comes through and sees it or hears about it, it reinforces the reputation. Makes people think this place is still dangerous. I sat back, processing everything he'd told me. It was a plausible story. Maybe even a true story. But it still didn't explain everything. Wynne, I said. The woman in the kitchen. What's her story? Jorah's expression shifted slightly. Uncomfortable. What about her? She warned me. Told me drivers avoid this place. She knows something. Wynne worked for the previous owners, Jorah said. She was here during the time when drivers were going missing. I kept her on because she knows the operation, knows the kitchen. But she doesn't talk much, especially not about what happened before I took over. You think she was involved? I don't know, I don't think so. But I think she saw things, knows things, and she's scared of what might happen if she talks. Before I could respond, Wynne herself appeared in the doorway. Her face was pale, eyes wide. "There's a truck coming," she said. "Up from the south. It's slowing down, pulling in." Jorah stood up quickly, moved to the window. I followed. In the distance, maybe half a kilometer down the highway, I could see a big rig approaching. It was moving slowly, hazard lights flashing. As we watched, it turned into the station lot and pulled up to the fuel pumps. Relief flooded through me. Another driver, someone else here. I wasn't alone with Jorah and his disturbing story anymore. But then I saw Jorah's face and the relief evaporated. He looked terrified. "We need to warn them," Wynne said. "We need to tell them to leave." "Why?" I asked. "What's wrong?" Jorah turned to me. "That truck, I recognize it. It's been here before, 3 times in the last 2 months. Same driver, same rig. But here's the thing." He pointed at the truck outside. "That's not a freight hauler. Look at the trailer." I looked. He was right. The trailer was unmarked, no company logos, no identification numbers visible. Just a plain white box trailer, the kind that could be carrying anything, or nothing. "And every time that driver stops here," Jorah continued, "he doesn't buy much fuel, doesn't eat, just comes in, looks around, asks questions. About me, about the station, about other drivers who've come through. He's watching this place." "Why would someone be watching the station?" I asked, though I was starting to understand. Because whoever killed those drivers, whoever was running the operation before, they might still be interested in this place, might still be using it somehow. And that driver out there, he might be part of it, or he might be investigating. Either way, it's dangerous. We watched as the driver climbed down from his cab. He was tall, wearing heavy winter gear that obscured his features. He didn't head toward the building. Instead, he walked slowly around the perimeter of the lot, looking at the ground, at the buildings, like he was searching for something. Then he stopped and stared directly at where the missing driver's truck was parked. Even from this distance, partially hidden by the building, that buried truck must have been visible to him. "Stay here," Jorah said. "Don't go out there. Don't talk to him." He started toward the lobby, but I grabbed his arm. "If he's dangerous, shouldn't we call for help?" "With what?" Jorah pulled free. "No cell service, no internet. The satellite phone is in my quarters, and by the time I get there and make a call, he'll be inside. No, the best thing to do is act normal. Serve him if he comes in. Don't give him any reason to suspect we know anything." "But we don't know anything," I said. "Not for sure. All we have are suspicions and a story about previous owners who might have been killers." Jorah looked at me hard. "You don't believe me. I don't know what to believe. But I know I don't want to be caught in the middle of whatever this is." I started toward the door, intending to get to my truck and leave. But Jorah stepped in front of me. "You can't leave now. If you go out there, if he sees you running, it'll raise questions. Could make things worse. I'm not staying here because you're paranoid," I said. "That truck outside, mine, is still running. I'm getting in it and driving north. If that other driver has questions, he can ask the RCMP." I pushed past Jorah and headed for the exit. Behind me, I heard Wynne say something in a low, urgent voice, but I didn't stop to hear what it was. I unlocked the front door, pushed it open, and stepped out into the cold. The driver by the fuel pumps turned at the sound. We made eye contact across the lot. He didn't wave, didn't call out, just watched me as I walked quickly toward my rig. My boots crunched on the gravel and snow. The distance to my truck felt like miles, even though it was only about 50 feet. I could feel the other driver's eyes on me the entire way. When I reached my cab, I grabbed the door handle and pulled. Locked. I'd locked it. Force of habit. I fumbled for my keys, hands shaking now from adrenaline more than cold. Behind me, I heard footsteps approaching. Not running, just walking at a steady pace. The other driver coming toward me. I got the key in the lock, turned it, yanked the door open. "Magnus," a voice called out. "Wait." I froze. That name, my name. But how did this person know my name? I'd never seen him before, never met him. I turned slowly. The driver had pulled down his balaclava, revealing his face. And I did recognize him, not from the Dempster, from somewhere else, from a long time ago. It took me a moment to place him, to connect the face to a memory. Then it clicked. He was a trucker I'd met years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years back, at a conference in Edmonton. We'd talked briefly, exchanged stories about routes and cargo. His name was... I couldn't remember his name, but I remembered his face. "You don't remember me," he said, stopping about 10 feet away. "That's okay, it's been a while. But I remember you, and I need to talk to you about this place, about what happened here." My hand was on the door of my truck, ready to climb in. "Why? Who are you?" "My name doesn't matter," he said. "What matters is that you're in danger. Everyone who stops at this station is in danger. And I need to tell you why before it's too late." I glanced back at the station building. Through the window, I could see Jorah and Wynne watching us. "Are you a cop?" I asked the stranger. "No. Are you with whoever was running the operation here? Before? The one that was targeting drivers?" The stranger shook his head. "I'm just someone who lost people to this place, people I cared about, and I've been trying to figure out what happened to them. How many years have you been investigating?" 3 years. That's how long my brother has been missing. He was driving north, stopped here for fuel, and never made it to his destination. I reported it to the RCMP. They searched, found nothing. Eventually, they declared him dead. But I never believed it, so I started my own investigation. And what I found... He paused, looked around the empty lot. "What I found is that this station is part of something bigger. Something that's still operating." I felt my stomach drop. Jorah said the previous owners ran the operation. That they're gone now. The stranger laughed, but there was no humor in it. The previous owners were middle management, facilitators. But they weren't in charge. Someone else was giving the orders. Someone who's still out there, and that someone is still using this station, still targeting drivers. I thought about the toolbox Jorah had found, the personal effects of missing drivers. "You have proof of this?" "Some. Not enough to bring to the police. That's why I've been coming here, watching, waiting, trying to catch them in the act. But they're careful, very careful, and if they know I'm investigating, they'll disappear. Just like the previous owners did." "So what do you want from me?" I asked. "Information," he said. "You just came from inside. You talked to the new owner. What did he tell you?" I hesitated. Every instinct told me not to trust this person, but everything he was saying aligned with what Jorah had told me. And if there was still an active operation targeting drivers, I needed to know about it. Before I could answer, the door to the station opened and Jorah stepped out. The stranger's hand went to his jacket, and I saw the outline of something underneath. A weapon. "This is getting out of control," I said quietly. "We need to settle this somewhere else, somewhere public." The stranger nodded slowly. "Meet me in Dawson City, 3 days from now. There's a diner on 2nd Avenue. I'll tell you everything I know. But right now, you need to leave this place, and don't come back." He walked back to his truck without another word, climbed into the cab, and drove away. Didn't fuel up. Didn't go inside. Just left. Jorah approached me cautiously. "What did he say to you? That I'm in danger? That this place is still being used for something? That I should leave and never come back?" Jorah's face was grim. "He's not wrong. Then, why are you still here?" "Because I don't have anywhere else to go. This is all I have left." "But you, You can leave. You should leave." I looked at him, at the station, at the buried truck behind the garage. "How many drivers?" I asked. "How many people have died because of this place?" "I don't know," Jorah said quietly. "Too many." I climbed into my truck, fired up the engine, and drove out of that lot without looking back. I drove north for 2 hours straight without stopping, pushing my rig harder than I should have given the road conditions. The Dempster stretched out ahead of me in an endless ribbon of gravel and ice, flanked on both sides by stunted spruce and snow-covered tundra. The sun was low on the horizon now, that weak Arctic light that never quite feels like proper daylight even at its brightest. My hands were locked on the wheel, knuckles white, eyes scanning constantly between the road ahead and the mirrors behind me. I kept expecting to see headlights following me, kept waiting for something to go wrong with my truck. Every strange sound from the engine made my heart rate spike. Every vibration through the steering wheel felt like potential sabotage. I'd checked everything before leaving Eagle Plains, done a thorough inspection of my rig, but that didn't mean something hadn't been tampered with. If what Jorah had told me was true, if the previous owners had been deliberately disabling trucks, then they'd have had plenty of time and opportunity to plant something that wouldn't fail immediately. Something timed to go wrong at exactly the worst moment, miles from help. The paranoia was eating at me. I'd been running freight on the Dempster for 12 years, knew this road better than most people knew their own neighborhoods. But now every kilometer felt dangerous in a way it never had before. I wasn't just fighting the weather and the isolation anymore. I was fighting the knowledge that someone, somewhere, might be actively working to make sure I didn't complete this run. That thought was more terrifying than any blizzard I'd ever driven through. At least with weather, you knew what you were dealing with. You could see the storm coming, could prepare for it, could make informed decisions about when to push forward and when to wait it out. But with human predators, there was no forecast, no warning. Just the sudden realization that you'd driven into a trap, and by then it was already too late. I passed the Arctic Circle marker around hour 3, that weathered sign marking the point where I crossed into the true north. Usually, this was a moment I enjoyed, a reminder of how few people ever came this far, how special it was to operate in conditions this extreme. Today, it just felt like I was driving further away from safety, deeper into territory where help was measured in days rather than hours. My satellite phone rang. The sound made me jump, nearly sent me swerving off the road. I grabbed it, checked the caller ID. It was my dispatcher calling from the company office in Whitehorse. I answered on speaker. "This is Clint." "Clint, it's dispatch. Just checking your position. You're running behind schedule." "I know. Had to stop longer than planned at Eagle Plains. Everything okay with the rig?" "Mechanically, yeah. Everything's fine. But there was an incident at the station." "What kind of incident?" I hesitated, not sure how much to say. The dispatcher was professional, had been routing my trips for years, but I didn't know how secure this line was. Didn't know if someone might be listening. "Just some questions from the RCMP," I said, keeping it vague. "About a missing driver, nothing that concerns me directly, but it took time." The dispatcher was quiet for a moment. "You're talking about the case from September? The one where they found that abandoned truck?" "Yeah. Did you know about that?" "Everyone knows about it," the dispatcher said. "It's been circulating in the driver community for months. Part of why so many guys won't take Dempster runs anymore. They're spooked." "I don't blame them," I said. "The place feels wrong." "Look," the dispatcher continued, "I need to tell you something. About an hour ago, we got a call at the office. Someone asking about your route, your schedule, what you were hauling. Did you give them any information?" "Of course not. We don't discuss driver details with random callers. But here's the thing. The person who called, they already knew most of it. They knew your name, knew you were running north to Inuvik, knew approximately when you'd left Dawson City. They weren't asking for information. They were confirming what they already knew. Ice formed in my stomach. Did you get a name? Number? They called from a blocked number and wouldn't identify themselves. Said they were with one of our partner companies, but when I asked which one, they hung up. I flagged it in our system, filed a report. But I wanted to warn you directly. If someone's tracking you, you need to be careful. I'm always careful, I said, though my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. This is different, Clint. This feels targeted. Do you want me to arrange for an escort? Get another driver to meet you somewhere, travel together the rest of the way? No. That would just put someone else at risk. Besides, I'm already past the point where anyone could catch up to me. I'm on my own until Inuvik. Just keep monitoring. If I don't check in when I'm supposed to, send someone. I will, and Clint, watch your back. The call ended, leaving me alone with the sound of the engine and the crunch of gravel under my tires. I thought about what the mysterious driver had said back at Eagle Plains. Meet me in Dawson City. 3 days from now. There's a diner on 2nd Avenue. But I wasn't going to be in Dawson City in 3 days. My route took me north to Inuvik, where I'd spend maybe 12 hours offloading cargo before turning around and heading south again. If I wanted to meet that driver, get the information he claimed to have, I'd have to make a special trip. Divert from my normal route. That could raise questions with my company, could create complications with my schedule, but it might also be the only way to understand what I'd stumbled into at Eagle Plains. To know whether I was really in danger or just being paranoid. The sun was setting now, that rapid Arctic sunset where daylight seems to collapse in on itself over the course of 30 minutes. I turned on my running lights and slowed down slightly. Night driving on the Dempster was dangerous under the best circumstances. The road was narrow, the shoulders non-existent in places, and wildlife crossings were common. Caribou, moose, even bears sometimes, appearing suddenly out of the darkness with no warning. Hit one of those at speed and you could total your rig, assuming you survived the impact at all. Around hour 5, I saw lights in my rearview mirror. Distant at first, maybe a kilometer back, but definitely there. Another vehicle, traveling north matching my speed. My first instinct was relief. Another driver. Someone else on this lonely road. But then I remembered the phone call to my dispatcher. Someone tracking my route, confirming my schedule. I watched the lights in my mirror. They weren't getting closer, but they weren't falling back either. Just maintaining a constant distance like they were pacing me, following me. I sped up slightly, pushed my rig up to 70 kilometers per hour even though that was faster than I should have been going in these conditions. The lights behind me sped up too, maintaining that same gap. I slowed back down to 60. The lights slowed down. There was no question now. They were following me deliberately. I grabbed my CB radio, keyed the mic. This is northbound freight at kilometer 420. Anyone else on this channel? Static. I tried again. Southbound traffic. Anyone out there? More static. Then, after a long pause, a voice came through. Scratchy and distorted, but audible. This is southbound at kilometer 470. Reading you weak, but clear. Who's asking? Just trying to get a position check, I said. I've got someone following me. Staying back, but matching my speed. I thought it might be another driver. Long pause. Then the voice came back. I don't see any northbound traffic ahead of me. You sure someone's following you? I checked my mirror again. The lights were still there. Definitely real, not my imagination. Yeah, I'm sure. Can you see them on your end? Negative. I'm about 50 kilometers south of you. If there's someone between us, they're running dark or they're off-road. That doesn't make sense. There's nowhere to go off-road out here." The voice on the CB went quiet. Then, carefully, "Maybe you should pull over. Let them pass. See who it is." That was reasonable advice. If this was just another driver, maybe someone from a mining operation or a local community, they'd go around me and I could relax. But if it was someone following me deliberately, pulling over would make me a sitting target. I'd be stationary, vulnerable, while they had all the mobility. Before I could decide, my engine coughed. Just once, a brief hiccup in the smooth rumble. But it was enough to send alarm shooting through me. I checked my gauges. Oil pressure normal, temperature normal, fuel level good. Everything looked fine, but that cough, that momentary loss of power, felt wrong. The engine coughed again. This time it lasted longer, maybe 2 full seconds where the power dropped noticeably before recovering. I eased off the accelerator, let my speed drop, gave the engine less load. It smoothed out, returned to its normal rhythm. But my heart was racing now. This is what Jorah had described. Sabotage designed to look like mechanical failure. Something that would cause a truck to break down in the middle of nowhere, leaving the driver stranded and helpless. The lights behind me were closer now. Maybe half a kilometer back, I could make out that it was a pickup truck, heavy duty, the kind used for industrial work in the territories. Not another big rig, not a commercial hauler, just someone in a truck, following a freight hauler through the Arctic night. I keyed the CB again. "Southbound, you still there?" The voice came back immediately. "Still here. What's your status?" "I've got engine trouble. Power's dropping intermittently. And that truck behind me is getting closer. You need me to turn around? Come back and check on you?" "No, you're too far out. Just stay on your route. But if I don't check in within the next hour, call the RCMP. Tell them I'm stranded at kilometer 420. "Will do." And, "Hey," the voice said, "whatever's happening, don't let them get you stopped. Keep moving as long as your engine will turn. Once you stop, you're done." I knew that. Every trucker knew that. Stopping in the wilderness, especially at night, especially in winter, was a death sentence unless you had a very good reason and a very good plan. But my engine was making the decision for me. Another cough, longer this time. Power dropped for almost 5 seconds before recovering. I was down to 40 kilometers per hour now, struggling to maintain even that. The pickup behind me was close enough that I could see it clearly in my mirrors. Dark-colored, maybe black or dark blue. No company markings visible. No front plate. Just tinted windows and a heavy brush guard on the front bumper. They were maybe 200 meters back now. Close enough that if my truck stopped completely, they'd be on me in seconds. I scanned the road ahead, looking for anything that might help. A pullout, a side road, anywhere I could maneuver that would give me an advantage. But there was nothing. Just the straight gravel highway stretching endlessly north, bounded by snow and trees and darkness. My engine coughed again, and this time it didn't recover. Power dropped to almost nothing. I was down to 20 kilometers per hour, then 15, then 10. The rig was shuddering now, the whole chassis vibrating as the engine struggled. I downshifted, trying to keep some momentum, but it was no use. Whatever had been done to my truck, it was working exactly as designed. I was going to be stranded out here in the dark, with whoever was following me closing in fast. The pickup accelerated. I could see it clearly now in my mirrors, coming up fast on my left side. They were going to pull alongside me, box me in, or force me off the road or worse. I did the only thing I could think of. I cranked the wheel hard right. My rig lurched off the highway onto the narrow shoulder, if you could even call it that. More like a strip of packed snow and frozen ground barely wide enough for my trailer. I felt the right side tires lose traction, Felt the whole rig start to slide sideways. For a moment, I thought I'd overcorrected, thought I was going to jackknife and flip the whole truck into the ditch. But the tires caught. I straightened out, found myself running parallel to the highway about 10 feet off the road. The pickup shot past where I'd been, its driver apparently not expecting me to veer off like that. I saw brake lights flash red in the darkness as they tried to slow down, tried to turn around. But I wasn't stopping. My engine was still running, barely, coughing and sputtering but providing just enough power to keep me moving. I steered back toward the highway, bounced across the shoulder and got my rig back on the gravel. The pickup had stopped about 100 meters ahead. I could see it sitting there blocking the right lane, waiting for me. I stayed in the left lane, built up what little speed I could manage. Maybe 25 kilometers per hour. Not fast, but moving. As I approached the pickup, I could see the driver's door opening. Someone was getting out, standing in the road, trying to flag me down or force me to stop. I leaned on my horn, that long, sustained blast that echoed across the empty tundra. Aimed my truck directly at the figure in the road. I wasn't going to stop, wasn't going to slow down. If they wanted to play chicken with 40 tons of freight hauler, that was their choice. At the last moment, the figure dove out of the way. I blasted past, saw the pickup start to move in my rearview mirror. They were coming after me again. But something had changed. My engine, which had been failing, suddenly smoothed out. Power returned, not full power, but enough. I accelerated, pushed up to 40 kilometers per hour, then 50. The pickup was following, but they weren't gaining any more. I kept my speed steady, kept watching my mirrors, kept my hand near the CB radio in case I needed to call for help. We drove like that for 20 kilometers. Me in my damaged rig, them in their pickup, maintaining a constant separation, neither closing in nor falling back. It felt like a test, like they were evaluating me, determining whether I was worth pursuing or whether to break off and wait for an easier target. Then, without warning, the pickup slowed down. I watched in my mirrors as the headlights fell back, grew more distant, finally disappeared entirely. They'd given up, or they'd achieved whatever they wanted to achieve. I didn't slow down, didn't stop to inspect my truck or check my engine, just kept driving north, putting as much distance between myself and whoever had been following me as possible. My hands were shaking on the wheel, my shirt soaked with sweat despite the cold. Adrenaline was making me jittery, making it hard to focus. But I forced myself to stay calm, to keep my breathing steady, to watch the road. The CB crackled. "Northbound, you still there?" It was the southbound driver from before. "I'm here," I managed to say, still moving. "What happened? I heard your horn." Had to discourage someone from blocking the road. They backed off. "You're clear now?" "For now." "But my engine's damaged, running rough. I need to make it to a maintenance facility. Nearest one is Fort McPherson, about 100 kilometers north of your position. Can you make it that far? I have to. There's no other choice." The driver was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that chilled me more than anything else that night. "You're not the first person this has happened to. I've been running this route for 6 years, and I've heard stories. Drivers getting followed. Engines failing mysteriously, people going missing. Some of us think there's a pattern. Think someone's targeting freight haulers specifically. Why? What would be the point? Cargo theft, maybe. Or insurance fraud. Or maybe just some psycho who gets off on terrorizing people in isolated areas. I don't know. Shh. But if you make it to Fort McPherson, if you make it through this, do yourself a favor. Report everything to the RCMP. Every detail. Because if we don't start documenting this, if we don't start building a case, more drivers are going to disappear." "I will," I said. "And thank you for staying on the line, for watching out." "That's what we do," the driver said. "We look out for each other. Because nobody else will." The rest of the drive to Fort McPherson was a blur. My engine held together somehow, running rough but functional. I kept my speed moderate, didn't push my luck, just focused on covering the distance. When I finally saw the lights of the settlement appear on the horizon, I nearly wept with relief. Fort McPherson wasn't much, just a small community of maybe 800 people on the banks of the Peel River, but it had a maintenance garage that serviced vehicles traveling the Dempster. Had fuel, had people, had safety. I pulled into the garage lot at just after midnight. The place was closed, but there was a night service number posted on the door. I called it, explained my situation. 20 minutes later, a mechanic showed up, an older guy with oil-stained coveralls and skeptical eyes. He listened to my engine, did a quick diagnostic check, then shook his head. "You've got contaminated fuel," he said. "Something in your tank that shouldn't be there. It's gumming up your injectors, causing power loss. You're lucky you made it here at all." "Contaminated how?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Hard to say without testing. Could be water, could be some kind of additive, could be deliberate sabotage." The mechanic gave me a long look. "You got enemies?" "Not that I know of, but I fueled up at Eagle Plains this morning." The mechanic's expression changed. "That explains it. What do you know about that place? I know it's got a bad reputation. Know that drivers have been disappearing. And I know that if you fueled up there, someone might have put something in your tank." I felt sick. "How long will it take to fix?" "I need to drain your fuel system, flush the lines, replace the filters. Probably 6 to 8 hours. You're not going anywhere tonight. Can you do it? Make it safe to drive?" "I can make it functional. Whether it's safe, that depends on whether whoever sabotaged you tries again. You might want to think about finding a different route home." "I don't have a different route. I have deliveries to make." The mechanic sighed. "Then you're braver than me. Or more foolish. I'm not sure which." He went to work on my truck while I sat in his office, drinking bad coffee and trying to process everything that had happened. My phone had signal here, weak but present. I called my dispatcher, updated them on the situation. They were concerned, but not surprised. Said they'd file a report with the RCMP, would coordinate with the garage on repairs, would adjust my schedule to account for the delay. Professional and efficient, but I could hear the worry in their voice. This wasn't just a mechanical failure. This was an attack. And it raised questions about every run I'd done in the past, every stop I'd made. How many times had I been at risk without knowing it? How many close calls had I survived through pure luck? I dozed fitfully in a chair in the garage office, jerking awake every time I heard a vehicle outside. Every set of headlights felt like a threat. Every sound felt like someone approaching. By the time the sun came up, I was exhausted, paranoid, and questioning every choice that had led me to this moment. The mechanic finished the repairs around 8 in the morning. He'd found evidence of a chemical additive in my fuel, something designed to break down over time and gradually clog the fuel system. Exactly what Jorah had described. A delayed sabotage that wouldn't be immediately obvious but would cause failure miles down the road. "Professional work," the mechanic said. "Whoever did this knew what they were doing. This wasn't some random vandalism. This was calculated." I paid for the repairs, thanked the mechanic, and climbed back into my rig. I had 2 choices now. I could complete my run to Inuvik, make my deliveries, and return south. Or I could turn around, head back to Dawson City, meet with that mysterious driver who claimed to have information. Both options felt dangerous. But staying ignorant felt more dangerous still. I started my engine, listened to it run smooth and clean, made my decision. I was going to Inuvik first, complete my job. Then I was going to Dawson City, going to get answers. Because if there was a larger operation targeting drivers, if Eagle Plains was just one piece of something bigger, then I needed to know, needed to understand what I was up against. And maybe, just maybe, I could help stop it before more drivers disappeared into the Arctic darkness. The drive to Inuvik took another day and a half. I pushed through without stopping for anything more than fuel and mandatory rest breaks, keeping my CB radio on constantly, checking my mirrors every few seconds, paranoid that at any moment I'd see headlights following me again. But the road stayed empty. Just me and the endless tundra and the weak Arctic sun tracking its low arc across the southern horizon. When I finally rolled into Inuvik and made my delivery, the relief was overwhelming. I'd completed the run. Made it through despite the sabotage, despite being followed, despite everything. The receiving warehouse manager noticed I looked rough. Asked if I was okay, if I needed anything. I told him I was just tired, that the run had been harder than usual. Didn't mention the rest. Didn't want to explain something I barely understood myself. I spent 12 hours in Inuvik, sleeping in a motel room with the door locked and a chair wedged under the handle. Even then, I barely slept. Every sound in the hallway made me jerk awake, reaching for the tire iron I'd brought up from my truck. When morning came, I checked out early, did a thorough inspection of my rig, and started the long drive south. Back toward Dawson City, back toward answers. The return trip felt different. I was driving into something now, not away from it. Every kilometer brought me closer to that meeting at the diner on 2nd Avenue, closer to whatever information that mysterious driver had promised. Part of me wanted to skip it, wanted to just drive straight through to Whitehorse and pretend none of this had happened. File a report with my company, let them handle it, go back to running normal routes in safer territory. But I knew I couldn't do that, couldn't just walk away from this. Too many drivers had disappeared, too many questions had no answers, and if there was even a chance that meeting this person could help stop whatever operation was targeting us, I had to take it. I made it back to Eagle Plains in the late afternoon, 3 days after I'd first stopped there. I'd been debating whether to fuel up there again or bypass it entirely, but my tanks were running low and the next station was too far. I'd have to stop, but this time I was prepared. I'd purchased a locking fuel cap in Fort McPherson, installed security cameras on my truck that recorded continuously to a cloud server, and I'd informed my dispatcher of my exact location and schedule. If anything happened, if I went missing, there would be a trail. The station looked exactly the same as before. Clean buildings, fresh paint, empty parking lot. I pulled up to the pumps and shut down my engine, then sat there for a moment, scanning the area. No sign of Jorah or Wynn, no other vehicles, just the station, silent and waiting. I climbed down from my cab, locked it behind me, and approached the building. The door was unlocked. The bell chimed when I pushed it open, but the lobby was empty. No one behind the counter, no sounds from the back. "Hello?" I called out. No response. I walked to the counter, looked around. Everything was neat and organized, like someone had been working there recently. The computer was on, displaying an inventory spreadsheet. A half-full coffee cup sat next to the keyboard, still warm to the touch. Someone had been here minutes ago. I moved towards the dining area, peered through the doorway. Empty tables, clean floors, but no sign of Wynn in the kitchen. The whole place felt abandoned, like everyone had stepped out at the same moment and just never come back. A sound from above made me freeze. Footsteps. Someone walking around on the 2nd floor, in what I assumed were the living quarters. I considered leaving, just fueling up my truck and getting out of there without interacting with anyone. But curiosity and concern kept me rooted. What if something had happened to Jorah and Wynne? What if whoever was running the larger operation had decided they were liabilities? The footsteps descended a staircase I hadn't noticed before, hidden behind a door marked Private. The door opened and Jorah emerged. He looked different. Haggard. He'd lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, he stopped short. "You came back," he said. It wasn't a question, just a flat statement of fact. "I needed fuel," I said. "Didn't have much choice." He nodded slowly, moved behind the counter. "How was your run?" "Complicated. Someone sabotaged my fuel system. I barely made it to Fort McPherson before the engine failed completely." Jorah's hands paused over the keyboard where he'd been preparing to process my payment. That's what I was afraid of. "You said they might still be using this place," I continued, "that the operation was still active." "You were right. Someone followed me north, tried to force me off the road." Jorah looked at me with something that might have been sympathy or might have been guilt. "I'm sorry. I tried to warn you." "Where's Wynne?" I asked. "The kitchen looks closed." "She's gone," Jorah said quietly. "Left 2 days ago. Said she couldn't do this anymore, couldn't keep pretending everything was normal when people kept disappearing." "She's scared. She knows more than she was telling me, doesn't she? About what happened here before you took over." Jorah was quiet for a long moment. Then he gestured toward the dining area. "Sit down. I'll get us coffee. We need to talk." I followed him into the dining room, chose a table where I could see both the entrance and the windows. Jorah brought 2 cups of coffee, set one in front of me, and sat down heavily in the opposite chair. "Wynne worked for the previous owners for 8 years, he began. "She saw everything. The drivers who stopped here and never left. The trucks that got sabotaged. The cargo that disappeared. She knew it was happening, but she was too afraid to say anything because the previous owners, they made it clear what would happen if she talked. They threatened her family, threatened her directly. So she kept quiet and did her job and tried not to think about the blood on her hands." "That's a hard burden to carry," I said. "After I bought this place," Jorah continued, "after I found that toolbox with all the personal effects, I confronted her, asked her what she knew, and she finally told me everything. How many drivers, how many people died because of this place?" Jorah stared into his coffee. "At least 15. Maybe more. That's just the ones she knows about for certain. The ones where she saw them arrive but never saw them leave. Could be others she didn't notice. Drivers who stopped when she was off shift or who came through during bad weather when the station was particularly isolated. 15 people, I repeated. And the RCMP knows about this? They know what I've told them, but without bodies, without concrete evidence, it's hard to build a case. The previous owners are gone, vanished completely. And the drivers who went missing, most of them were reported as accidents. Went off the road in bad weather, died from exposure, bodies never recovered. It happens often enough up here that nobody questioned it too closely. Until someone started noticing the pattern, I said. Someone like that driver who came here the other day, the one who's looking for his brother. Jorah nodded. He's not the only one. There are families, other drivers, people who've been investigating independently because they don't trust the official explanations. They're building their own case, collecting their own evidence, and they're getting close to something. Close to what? I don't know exactly. But 3 weeks ago, someone broke into my office, went through my files, copied documents. They were careful, didn't damage anything, but I could tell someone had been there. And last week I got a phone call, middle of the night. Unknown number. Voice on the other end just said 6 words. Stop talking to investigators or else. That's a direct threat. Did you report it? To who? The RCMP? They can't protect me. Can't even protect themselves. One of the investigators looking into the missing drivers, a retired Mountie who'd been asking questions, he had a car accident 2 months ago. Died on the Klondike Highway. Single vehicle collision, supposedly lost control in bad weather, but his family doesn't believe it. Think he was getting too close to something and was silenced. I felt cold spreading through my chest. You're saying there's a cover-up involving law enforcement. I'm saying I don't know who to trust, Jorah said. I'm saying that whatever operation was running out of this place, it had reach, had connections, and those connections might still be active. Why are you still here? I asked. Why haven't you just sold this place, cut your losses, gotten as far away as possible? Because if I leave, if I run, then they win, and more drivers will die. Someone has to be here, has to be watching, has to be ready to warn people. I've been documenting everything, keeping records, building my own file of evidence. When the time is right, when I have enough proof, I'm going to bring it all to the media, force it into the open where they can't suppress it. That's assuming you live long enough, I said. That's assuming they don't get to you first. I know the risks, Jorah said, but what's the alternative? Spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering if today's the day they come for me. At least this way I'm doing something useful. At least I might be able to stop them. I respected that, even if I thought it was foolish. We sat in silence for a moment, drinking coffee, both of us lost in our own thoughts. Then I asked the question I'd been avoiding, the driver who came here, the one looking for his brother. You recognized his truck. Have you seen him before that day? Jorah hesitated. Yes, he's been here 5 times in the past 2 months. Always asking questions, always watching. At first I thought he might be part of the operation, someone checking up on me. But his grief is real, his desperation is real. I don't think he's involved. I think he's exactly what he claims to be, a brother trying to find out what happened to his family. Did he tell you his name? No, and I didn't ask. Sometimes it's better not to know. Makes it harder for them to connect us if things go bad. I finished my coffee and stood up. I'm meeting him in Dawson City, tomorrow afternoon. He said he'd tell me everything he knows. Jorah looked up at me. Be careful. People who know too much tend to have accidents. I'm aware of the risk, but I have to know, have to understand what I'm dealing with. Just promise me something, Jorah said. If something happens to me, if I disappear or have an accident, make sure someone knows about this place. Make sure the story gets out, I promise. I paid for my fuel and left. As I climbed back into my truck, I looked back at the station one last time. Jorah was standing in the window, watching me leave. He looked like a man who knew his time was running out but had made peace with it. I hoped I wouldn't end up the same way. The drive to Dawson City took 8 hours. I arrived late in the evening, found a motel on the outskirts of town, and checked in under a false name. Paid cash. Didn't want anyone tracking my movements, tracking my credit cards, knowing where I was staying. The room was basic but secure. I did my usual precautions. Chair under the door handle, tire iron within reach, phone charged and ready. Set an alarm for 6 in the morning. I needed to rest, but I also needed to stay alert. The meeting was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon at a diner on 2nd Avenue. That gave me time to scout the location, watch the area, make sure I wasn't walking into a trap. I barely slept, kept jerking awake, convinced I'd heard someone trying to get into my room. Every time I checked, the hallway was empty. Just paranoia and exhaustion playing tricks on my mind. When morning finally came, I felt like I'd been awake all night. I showered, dressed, and went to scout the diner. It was called the Sourdough Cafe, A small local place that looked like it had been there for decades. Old mining photos on the walls, vintage equipment displayed behind glass, the kind of place that catered to locals more than tourists. It had good sight lines, multiple exits, and was busy enough that anything violent would have witnesses. A smart choice for a meeting. I grabbed breakfast at a different restaurant, killed time by walking around town, always keeping an eye on my surroundings, watching for anyone who might be watching me. Dawson City wasn't big enough to get lost in, but it was busy enough with tourists and workers that I could blend in if I was careful. At 1:30, I walked to the diner and went inside. Found a booth near the back with a view of the entrance, ordered coffee, and waited. The mysterious driver arrived at exactly 2 o'clock. He walked in, scanned the room, spotted me, and came over. Up close, I could see he was younger than I'd initially thought. Maybe late 30s. He had the weathered look of someone who spent a lot of time outdoors, and his eyes had that hyper-alert quality I recognized from my own reflection. The look of someone who'd been living with fear for too long. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. I gestured to the seat across from me. He slid into the booth, ordered coffee from the waitress, and waited until she was out of earshot before speaking. "Thanks for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I said I would." He nodded. "I appreciate that. Most people, when they get involved in something like this, they run. They don't want to know more, don't want to be connected to it. Can't say I blame them. I'm not most people. No, you're not." He took a sip of his coffee. "My name is Lorne. I didn't give you my name before because I wasn't sure if I could trust you. But I've checked you out. Called around, talked to other drivers. You've got a good reputation. Been running the Dempster for years without incident. That tells me you're careful, competent, and not part of whatever's been happening up there. I appreciate the background check," I said. "Now tell me what you know." Lorne pulled out a folder from inside his jacket, laid it on the table between us. Inside were photographs, printed articles, handwritten notes, the accumulated evidence of someone who'd been obsessively investigating for years. My brother's name was Dennis. He was a driver, like you, ran freight up the Dempster, made good money, loved the solitude. 3 years ago, he took a run from Whitehorse to Inuvik. Standard shipment, nothing unusual. He checked in with his dispatcher when he stopped at Eagle Plains for fuel. That was the last anyone heard from him. His truck was found a week later, abandoned on the side of the highway about 40 kilometers north of the station. Engine was cold, keys were in the ignition, his personal belongings were still in the cab, but Dennis was gone, just vanished. The RCMP searched the area, brought in dogs and helicopters. Found nothing. Eventually, they declared him dead, assumed he'd gotten disoriented, wandered into the bush, died from exposure. But I didn't believe it. Why not? Because Dennis was too experienced, too careful. He knew the dangers, knew how to survive. And his truck, when I went to look at it after the police released it, something was wrong. "What do you mean?" Lorne pulled out a photograph. It showed the interior of a truck cab, looked normal at first glance, but he pointed to specific details. "See the fuel gauge? Nearly full. See the emergency supplies? All still there. Unused. Now look at this." He pulled out another photo. Close-up of the steering column. You see these scratches around the ignition? That's from someone hot-wiring the engine. And here, on the driver's seat, you can see the impression in the fabric. Someone sat there for extended periods. Someone who wasn't Dennis, based on the weight distribution. You're saying someone else drove his truck, moved it to that location to make it look like he'd broken down. Exactly. And if they moved his truck, that means they took Dennis somewhere else. Somewhere the police didn't search. Somewhere they didn't want him found. "You think he's dead? I know he's dead," Lorne said quietly. "What I don't know is where they buried him or why they killed him. But I've spent 3 years piecing together what happened, and I've found a pattern. Show me." Lorne spread out more documents. Maps with marks indicating where drivers had gone missing, dates and times of last known contacts, names of victims, some official, some that had never been reported to police. There were 23 names on his list. 23 drivers who'd disappeared on the Dempster or nearby highways over the past decade. Not all of them stopped at Eagle Plains, but most of them did. That's where the pattern centers. He tapped the map. Eagle Plains, it's the common point. Almost every missing driver fueled up there within 24 hours before they disappeared. That can't be a coincidence. It's not. The previous owners, a father and son named Mackenzie, they ran that place for 23 years, and I've traced the disappearances back almost to the day they took over. Before them, the station had a clean record. No missing drivers, no incidents. But as soon as they bought it, the deaths started. What were they doing? Robbing the drivers, taking their cargo. Lorne shook his head. That's what I thought at first, but the economics don't make sense. Most of these drivers were hauling low-value goods. Construction supplies, food shipments, mechanical parts. Nothing worth killing someone over. And in many cases, the cargo was still in the truck when it was found, so it wasn't about theft. Then what was it about? "I think they were being paid to make people disappear," Lorne said. "I think someone was using Eagle Plains as a disposal site for inconvenient individuals. The father and son, they were just contractors, hired muscle. They'd identify targets, drivers who fit certain profiles, and they'd eliminate them in ways that looked like accidents. Remote location, harsh weather, dangerous roads. Easy to make a death look natural up there. Who would pay for something like that? And why target drivers specifically? That's what I've been trying to figure out," Lorne said. "But here's what I know. 6 of the missing drivers had something in common. They all worked for the same logistics company at some point in their careers. Different times, different routes, but same employer. A company called Northern Reach Transport. I felt my blood go cold. I've heard of them, big operation. Do a lot of contract work for mining companies and government shipments." "Exactly, and Northern Reach has had some problems over the years. Drivers reporting irregularities in shipments. Cargo that doesn't match manifests. Sealed containers that aren't supposed to be opened. A few drivers who worked for them made formal complaints, threatened to go to authorities. Those are the drivers who ended up missing. You're saying Northern Reach was having drivers killed to silence them? About things they'd seen or transported?" "I'm saying it's a possibility. I've tried to prove it, tried to connect the dots definitively, but I keep hitting walls. People don't want to talk. Records disappear. Witnesses recant their statements. And anyone who pushes too hard, well, they tend to have accidents. Like that retired Mountie? You heard about that?" Lorne nodded. He was helping me. Had connections, knew how to navigate the system. We were close to getting someone from Northern Reach to talk, a former dispatcher who claimed to have evidence. Then he died in that car accident and the dispatcher disappeared. Just vanished. Moved away, changed phone numbers, went completely off-grid. I pulled out my own phone, showed him photos I'd taken at Eagle Plains. The buried truck belonging to the driver from the missing person flyer. The defaced photographs on the wall. Lorne studied them carefully. "This is good. This is evidence. Did you show these to the RCMP?" "Not yet. I wanted to understand what I was dealing with first." "Good instinct," Lorne said. "Because I don't think we can trust the RCMP. At least not all of them." "What do you mean?" He pulled out another document. A personnel file for an RCMP officer stationed in Dawson City during the time of several disappearances. The officer's name had been redacted, but Lorne had made notes in the margins. This officer was in charge of investigating 3 of the missing driver cases. In all 3 instances, he concluded they were accidents. Didn't pursue leads, didn't follow up on evidence, basically rubber-stamped the files and moved on. And here's the interesting part. He pulled out a bank statement. Redacted name, but showing deposits. Large, irregular deposits. Payments from an offshore account. You're saying a Mountie was being paid to cover up the murders. I'm saying someone in law enforcement had a financial incentive to make sure these cases never got properly investigated. Could be one officer. Could be more. Either way, it means going through official channels is dangerous. So what do we do? I asked. How do we stop this if we can't trust the police? We build an airtight case, Lauren said. Gather enough evidence that it can't be suppressed. Then we take it to the media, to federal investigators, to anyone who can force it into the open. That's what I've been working toward. And that's why I need your help. What can I do? You've been to Eagle Plains recently. Talked to the new owner. You've seen things firsthand. Your testimony, combined with the evidence I've gathered, might be enough to force a real investigation. I'm willing to testify, I said, but I need to know what I'm getting into. What are the risks? Lauren was quiet for a moment. Then he said, if we do this, if we go public with what we know, there's a good chance they'll come after us. Try to discredit us, threaten us. Maybe worse. Everyone who's gotten close to exposing this has ended up dead or disappeared. I need you to understand that before you commit. I understand. But I can't just pretend I don't know. Can't keep driving those roads knowing what's happening to people. So I'm in. Whatever you need. Lauren reached across the table and shook my hand. Thank you. I've been doing this alone for 3 years. It helps to know someone else believes me. Someone else is willing to fight. We spent the next 2 hours going through his evidence in detail. He showed me records of truck maintenance that had been falsified, fuel purchases that didn't match up with reported stops, communications between Eagle Plains and unknown parties, photographs of the Mackenzie family, the previous owners. In one photo, the father and son were standing in front of the station. Behind them, partially visible, was a truck. I recognized it immediately. That's the truck that's buried behind the station now, the one from the missing driver. Lauren nodded. I took that photo myself, 2 years ago. I'd been watching the station, documenting who came and went. That truck was there for weeks before it suddenly disappeared. I thought maybe the driver had come back, recovered it. But now, hearing that it's still on the property, just hidden, that confirms they were keeping it. Probably planning to dispose of it eventually, but never got around to it. Or maybe they kept it as insurance. Evidence they could use against someone if needed. We were so focused on the documents that we didn't notice the man approaching our table until he was standing right beside us. Both of us looked up, startled. The man was in his 50s, wearing casual clothes, but there was something about the way he carried himself. Authority. Purpose. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Gentlemen, mind if I join you? We don't know you, Lauren said. No, but I know you. Both of you. He pulled out a wallet, flipped it open to show a badge. RCMP, Detective Division, and I've been very interested in your investigation, Lauren. Been following your progress for some time now. Lauren's face went pale. We're just having coffee. Don't play games, the detective said. I know what you've been doing, know what you're building a case for, and I'm here to offer you some advice. Stop. This isn't a request. This is a warning. From you? Or from whoever's paying you to cover this up. The detective's expression hardened. Careful. Making accusations like that can get you in a lot of trouble. We have evidence, I said. We have proof of what's been happening. Do you? The detective reached out and tapped the folder on the table. Because from where I'm sitting, all I see is a conspiracy theorist who spent 3 years harassing a legitimate business and bothering law enforcement with baseless claims. And now he's recruited someone else to his delusions. That's not how this ends. How does it end? Lorne asked. The detective leaned in closer. It ends with you dropping this crusade before you get hurt. It ends with you accepting that sometimes people die in the wilderness, and there's no grand conspiracy behind it. It ends with you going back to your normal life and forgetting about all of this. And if we don't, then you'll be making a big mistake, the kind of mistake people don't recover from. He straightened up, looked at both of us. I'll be watching you. Both of you, and if you make any moves to go public with your theories, I'll know, and I'll make sure you regret it. He walked away, left the diner without looking back. Lorne and I sat there in stunned silence. That just confirmed everything, I finally said. He's protecting someone. Protecting the operation. We need to move fast, Lorne said, gathering up his documents. Before they can stop us, we need to get this to someone who can help, someone outside the local system. Do you have contacts? Federal investigators? Media? I have a reporter who's been following the story. Works for a national outlet. She's been waiting for me to gather enough evidence to go on record. I think we're there now. With your testimony added to what I have, she'll run the story. Then let's do it. Tonight. Before they can interfere. We left the diner separately, arranging to meet at Lorne's motel in 2 hours. That would give us both time to make sure we weren't being followed, time to gather our materials. I walked back to my truck, constantly checking over my shoulder. The detective's warning had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. This wasn't just about exposing a criminal operation anymore. This was about survival. I climbed into my cab, started the engine, and headed toward Lorne's motel. But as I drove, I noticed a vehicle following me. Dark SUV, staying back but matching my turns. I took several random routes, doubled back on myself, tried to lose them, but they stayed with me. I grabbed my phone, called Lorne. We have a problem. I'm being followed. Get to the motel, he said. I'll be ready. I pulled into the motel parking lot 20 minutes later. The SUV pulled in behind me. Parked a few spaces away. I could see 2 people inside but couldn't make out their faces. I grabbed my tire iron, climbed down from my cab, and walked toward Lorne's room. He opened the door before I could knock, pulled me inside, and locked it behind me. Did they follow you all the way? Yeah, they're in the parking lot right now. Lorne moved to the window, peered through the curtains. 2 men in the SUV. Professional looking. Could be RCMP, could be private security. Either way, we're boxed in. What do? We get this information out first, Lorne said, before they can stop us. He opened his laptop, started uploading files to a secure cloud server. I'm sending everything to my reporter contact. Once it's out there, once she has it, they can't suppress it anymore. How long will it take? 10, maybe 15 minutes. The files are large. I watched the upload progress bar crawl forward while keeping an eye on the parking lot through the curtains. The men in the SUV hadn't moved, just sitting there, watching, waiting for something. This feels wrong, I said. If they wanted to stop us, they'd have done it already, unless they're waiting for backup, or unless they're waiting to see who else we contact, see if there are other people involved. Lorne considered that. You might be right. If they think this is bigger than just us, they might want to identify everyone before they make a move. The upload was at 60% when Lorne's phone rang. He checked the caller ID, frowned. It's the reporter, he answered, put it on speaker. Lorne, you need to stop what you're doing. The reporter's voice was tense, urgent. Stop uploading those files. Why? What's wrong? I've been contacted by someone very high up. They know you're sending me information, and they're threatening to shut down the story, threatening legal action against the paper, against me personally. Let them threaten. We have evidence. We can prove everything. It doesn't matter if we can't publish it. And they're not just threatening legal action. They're making it clear that if we run this story, there will be consequences. People will get hurt. I have to think about my safety, Lorne. I have to think about my family. Please don't do this, Lorne said. Please don't let them silence this. 3 years I've been working on this. 3 years trying to find out what happened to my brother. If you don't run the story, it's all for nothing. I'm sorry, I truly am, but I can't help you. She ended the call. Lorne stared at his phone, devastated. They got to her. They shut down our only way to go public. What about other reporters? Other outlets? We can try. But if they got to her this fast, they probably have people watching all the major media outlets. We need a different approach. I thought for a moment. Social media. We put it out there ourselves. Make it viral before they can suppress it. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. Lorne nodded slowly. You're right. If we release everything publicly, simultaneously, on multiple platforms, it'll be too widespread to contain. Let's do it. We spent the next hour setting up accounts, uploading files, preparing posts with all the evidence we'd gathered. Names, dates, photographs, documents. Everything laid out in clear, undeniable detail. We scheduled the post to go live at midnight, giving us time to get somewhere safe before the information dropped. But as we worked, I kept thinking about that detective's warning. About everyone who'd gotten close to exposing this ending up dead or disappeared. Were we about to make the same mistake? Were we walking into a trap we couldn't see? At 11:30, Lorne closed his laptop. It's done. Everything's uploaded and scheduled. In 30 minutes, the world is going to know what happened at Eagle Plains. What happens to us? I asked. Do we run? Do we hide? Do we wait for them to come after us? We stay together, Lorne said. Safety in numbers. And we keep documenting everything. If they come for us, if they try anything, we make sure it's recorded. Make sure there's evidence. We left the motel through the back exit, avoiding the SUV in the parking lot. Walked to an all-night diner 3 blocks away, chose a table where we could see the door. Ordered coffee and waited for midnight. My phone was recording video continuously now, streaming to the cloud. Insurance. When midnight came, we both checked our phones. The posts had gone live. Within minutes, they were being shared, commented on, spreading across social media. Evidence of multiple murders, corruption in law enforcement, corporate conspiracy. It was all out there now, public and permanent. We'd done it, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like we'd just painted targets on our backs and were waiting for the shot. Lorne's phone buzzed. He checked it, went pale. What is it? A message. From an unknown number, he showed me the screen. 6 words, identical to what Jorah had received. Stop talking to investigators or else. They know, I said. They know what we just did. And they're coming for us. We need to move. Get somewhere public. Somewhere with security cameras and witnesses. We left money on the table and headed for the door. But as we stepped outside, I saw the SUV from earlier parked across the street, engine running, waiting. They're here, Lorne said. We need to split up. Make it harder for them to follow both of us. No, I said. You split up, you're vulnerable. We stay together. We walked quickly down the main street, heading toward the RCMP detachment. If we could get there, get inside, we'd have some protection. Or at least we'd be in a place where they couldn't make us disappear without witnesses. But halfway there, another vehicle pulled up beside us. The passenger window rolled down. I expected to see the detective. Instead, I saw Jorah. "Get in," he said. "Both of you. Now." We didn't have time to question it. We climbed into his truck and he accelerated away, tires squealing on the pavement. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Saving your lives, hopefully. I got a call an hour ago, warning me that you two were about to do something stupid and that I needed to get out of Eagle Plains before it all came down." "Who called you?" "Wynn. She's been monitoring the situation, has contacts I didn't know about. When she heard you were going public, she warned me to run. Said they'd be cleaning house, eliminating everyone who knew too much." "So, you're running? What else can I do? Stay and wait for them to kill me?" I thought about what he'd said before. About not running. About standing his ground and fighting. That determination seemed to have evaporated in the face of actual danger. "Where are we going?" Lorne asked. "Away from Dawson City, away from the Dempster. Somewhere remote enough that they won't find us until this blows over. And if it doesn't blow over, then we stay hidden for as long as it takes." I looked back through the rear window. The SUV was following us. Not close, but definitely tracking our movement. "They're still behind us." Jorah glanced in his mirror. "I know, I'm trying to lose them." He took a series of turns, heading out of town onto secondary roads. The SUV stayed with us. We drove for 40 minutes deeper into wilderness, until we reached an old mining road that led into the hills. Jorah turned onto it, killed his headlights, and drove in darkness using only the moonlight. The SUV overshot the turn, kept going on the main road. We'd lost them. For now. Jorah parked in a clearing surrounded by dense forest. "Shut off the engine. We're safe here for a few hours. Long enough to figure out our next move." "What is our next move?" I asked. "We've released the information. It's out there. Now we just have to survive long enough for it to matter." Lorne was checking his phone. "The posts are spreading. Thousands of shares already. News outlets are picking it up. This is working, but at what cost?" Jorah asked quietly. "You've just declared war on people who've been killing with impunity for years. People with resources and connections. You think releasing some documents online is going to stop them?" "It's a start," I said. "It's more than anyone else has managed to do." Jorah shook his head. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. This isn't just about Eagle Plains. This isn't just about Northern Reach transport. This is part of something much bigger. Something that goes all the way to the top." "What are you talking about?" Lorne asked. Jorah reached into his jacket, pulled out a USB drive. "After Wynn left, after she warned me to run, she gave me this. Said it was everything she'd been too afraid to share before. Evidence she'd been collecting for years. Proof of what was really happening." He plugged the drive into his phone, opened the files. What we saw made my blood run cold. Communications between Northern Reach Transport and government officials. Shipping manifests for illegal goods moving through the territories. Financial records showing payments to law enforcement, to politicians, to corporate executives. This wasn't just about silencing whistleblower drivers. This was about using the remote northern routes to move contraband. Drugs, weapons, stolen goods. And Eagle Plains had been a waypoint, a place where shipments could be verified, where problematic individuals could be eliminated, where the operation could function far from oversight. "How deep does this go?" I asked. "All the way," Jorah said. "Federal level, maybe higher. The missing drivers, they weren't just witnesses. They were loose ends. People who'd seen too much, who'd transported things they shouldn't have, who'd asked too many questions. And Eagle Plains was where those loose ends got tied off." Lorne was staring at the files, his face pale. "My brother. Dennis. He was hauling for Northern Reach. Was he carrying contraband? Did he know what he was transporting? According to this, Jorah said, scanning through documents, your brother filed a complaint 3 days before he disappeared, reported irregularities in a shipment, sealed containers that were supposed to go to one location but were being diverted to another. He threatened to go to authorities. Lorne's hands were shaking. They killed him for that? For asking questions. That's how these operations work. Zero tolerance for loose ends. I felt sick. How many drivers have died for this? How many people have been murdered to keep this secret? We'll probably never know the full count, Jorah said. But based on these records, at least 40 people over the past decade. Maybe twice that if you include incidents that weren't directly tied to Eagle Plains. We need to add this to what we've already released, I said. This is the proof we needed. This connects everything. But as I reached for the USB drive, we heard it. The sound of vehicles approaching. Multiple engines, coming up the mining road toward our location. They found us, Lorne said. How? How did they find us? Jorah's face fell. The phone. My phone. When I plugged in the USB drive, it must have activated something. A tracker or a signal. They've been monitoring it. He threw the phone out the window, but it was too late. We could see headlights now, 3 vehicles coming up the road, surrounding our position. We have to run, I said. Get into the forest, use the darkness. We abandoned Jorah's truck and ran into the trees. Behind us, I could hear doors slamming, voices shouting, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. They were coming after us. We ran blindly, stumbling over roots and rocks, branches whipping at our faces. The forest was dense, disorienting. I lost sight of Jorah almost immediately. Lorne stayed close, but I could hear him breathing hard, struggling. A gunshot cracked through the night. Then another way. They weren't trying to capture us. They were trying to kill us. We kept running, I don't know for how long. Eventually, I couldn't hear Lorne behind me anymore. Couldn't hear anything except my own breathing and the sound of my boots on frozen ground. I stopped, pressed my back against a tree trying to get my bearings. My phone was still in my pocket, still recording, still streaming to the cloud. Whatever happened, there would be evidence. I heard movement nearby. Footsteps, someone approaching. I tightened my grip on the tire iron I'd somehow managed to hold onto throughout the run. If they found me, I wasn't going down without a fight. But the figure that emerged from the darkness wasn't one of our pursuers. It was Wynne. She looked different out here, harder, more capable. Like the frightened cook had been a disguise, and this was who she really was. We need to move, she said quietly. They're sweeping the area. I'll get you out of here, but you need to trust me. Why should I trust you? You worked for the people who did this. You knew what was happening and you said nothing. I said nothing because I was trying to stay alive, Wynne said. But I've been documenting everything, collecting evidence, feeding information to investigators. I've been working against them from the inside for years. Now, come on, we don't have much time. I followed her through the forest. She moved with confidence, like she knew exactly where she was going. After about 20 minutes, we reached a trail that led down to a logging road. A vehicle was waiting there, old pickup truck, engine running. Get in, Wynne said. I'm taking you somewhere safe. Where? Somewhere they won't find you. Somewhere you can finish what you started. As we drove away from the chaos, I asked about Lorne and Jorah. I don't know, Wynne admitted. I lost track of them during the pursuit. But if they're smart, if they stayed hidden, they might have made it out. We drove through the night, eventually reaching a cabin deep in the wilderness. Remote, off-grid, invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look. This is where I've been building my case, Wynne said. This is where I keep the real evidence. The stuff I could never risk having at Eagle Plains. Inside the cabin were filing cabinets full of documents, photographs, recordings. Years' worth of evidence meticulously collected and organized. Everything you need to prove what's been happening is here, Wynne said. Everything I've gathered, everything I know, take it, use it, finish this. Why are you giving this to me? Why not use it yourself? Because I'm a dead woman walking, Wynne said simply. They know I've been collecting evidence. Know I've been talking to people. It's only a matter of time before they find me. But you still have a chance. You can get this to the right people. Make sure the story gets told. I spent the next 3 days in that cabin, going through everything Wynne had collected. It was overwhelming, comprehensive, undeniable proof of a conspiracy that stretched across law enforcement, corporate leadership, and government offices. Proof of murders, corruption, trafficking, everything we'd suspected and more. On the 4th day, Wynne brought news. Lauren's body had been found, killed in what was being reported as a hunting accident. A stray bullet in the wilderness. Jorah was missing, presumed dead. The detective who'd warned us at the diner had given a press conference, dismissing our social media posts as conspiracy theories from disturbed individuals. The story was being buried, suppressed, forgotten. But the evidence was still here, still documented, still true. I made copies of everything. Encrypted files stored in multiple locations. Sent packages to journalists, to federal investigators, to anyone I thought might listen. Used Wynne's contacts to reach people outside the corrupted system. Then I left the cabin and drove south. Kept driving until I was out of the territories, out of the north, back in civilization where I thought I might be safe. I haven't been back to the Dempster since. Haven't taken any runs that would bring me near Eagle Plains. I work different routes now, different regions. Keep a low profile. But I still check the news every day. Still wait to see if the evidence will ever make a difference. If the story will ever break into the open. So far, nothing. The cabin where Wynne kept her evidence burned down 2 weeks after I left. She disappeared, officially listed as missing, presumed dead, just like all the others. And Eagle Plains, it's still operating, still serving travelers on the Dempster Highway, under new ownership again, supposedly, but drivers still avoid it. Still spread warnings through the community. Still whisper about the place where people disappear. I don't know if we accomplished anything. Don't know if the evidence I spread will ever lead to justice. But I know this. I survived, and I'm still here, still driving, still watching. Still ready to testify if anyone ever builds a case strong enough to matter. The files I copied from Wynne's cabin are hidden. Safe. Waiting for the right moment. And someday, maybe, someone will be brave enough or powerful enough to use them. To expose what happened in that lonely station on the Dempster Highway. To bring justice for Dennis and Lorne and Jorah and all the other drivers who disappeared into the Arctic darkness. Until then, I keep moving, keep my head down, keep my phone recording. Because I learned something important through all of this. The most dangerous roads aren't the ones through blizzards and wilderness. They're the ones that lead to the truth. And some people will kill to make sure you never reach the end of that journey. I still drive trucks, still love the solitude and the challenge. But I never stop at Eagle Plains, and I never will.